Pitch stream. What do we got here?
Give me 1 second, guys.
You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
And we are live. Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. As always, with me are Philly Chris, Russ the producer, and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinthemorning.com. That is MikeGinthemorning.com. What's it called, Philly Chris?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
How about you, Russ?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
Liberty T. Lee, are you with us?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
How about you, Dom?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your barber, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody who listen to check us out at MikeGinthemorning.com. I also remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at the Fox News Radio WFYL family. We've got Ben Shapiro bringing you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. Scott Adams coming at you with the Scott Adams Show weekdays from 9 a.m. until noon. We've got the one and the only Dan Bongino bringing you the Dan Bongino Show weekdays right up until Ben Shapiro. And finally, we've got Michael Knowles bringing you the Michael Knowles Show weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show them some love. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hit it, Russ.
You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Before I introduce our very special guest for today's program, I want to give a nice shout out to some of the people participating over in the chat, participating in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas. We've got Stacks Farmstead saying, "What's up? How you doing?" Over to Jason Stack over at Stacks Farmstead. We've got Scott. Scott was complaining about the technical difficulties. I know who you could direct that complaint towards, right? There's
me.
only one mustard-eating producer on this program. CB says, hey, what's up, guys? Russ, what's going on? It's freezing. Oh, the screen was freezing. I was going to say, it's like 102 degrees outside, CB. What the heck are you talking about?
Where are you?
Yeah,
Some kind of drugs? We've
my
got
office here
Rita
is 89.
catching up with us, saying, hey, guys. All right, we're ready to rock and roll. We've got the gang all here. With that being said, it's always great to see everybody, but we got some very serious things going on in our country right now. Things that we did not want to see happen. And when you see stuff like this making its way on your television screen, or maybe coming out of your radio, it saddens each and every one of us. And one of the first things that I thought of when I started to see these things on the news, the way the exit took place and the bungling that it was, I honestly felt very sorry for the men and women who served over the last 2 decades in fighting for everything it is that we know and love as Americans. And when folks who have paid that price, who have gone out there and written that blank check in the name of our country's freedom, some of them come back missing limbs. Some of them don't come back at all. Others come back with things that they'll carry with them for the rest of their lives. And it makes me feel absolutely horrible to see it all end this way. So I want to give a thank you from myself and the Mike G in the Morning family to all those men and women who served, because very important for us to recognize that. I don't want any of that to be in vain. But ultimately, I think we're seeing the mainstream media at work here, the fake news at work. Because notice how they're minimizing a whole lot of this. Depending on which news station or stations you've followed, you're going to have a very different perspective on what's taken place over the last few days. And you've got President Mr. Burns out there touting what happened yesterday and the day before, making it seem as if it's one of the greatest missions that ever took place as far as evacuations go. To say that this was the greatest rescue in history is like also calling the Titanic the greatest maritime rescue in history, if you ask me. But I want to get a perspective of somebody who served. We've got a very special guest on the program with us. Also see some comments over here from Jeremy Miller, got out of football practice just in time. We know that he himself is a veteran as well. Thank you for joining us, Jeremy. But we've got Dominic Leon. If any one of our listeners has seen the video of when we went out with the show to New York City and handed out care packages to homeless veterans, then you will recognize the face of Dominic Leon. He was a part of that project. It was started out as an idea. Liberty had an idea that evolved into something that I brought to Dominic's attention. And he kind of put his own spin on it, and we started making things happen, got a bunch of people involved, and that couldn't have happened without the help of a whole bunch of people. We had a great time out there interacting with those veterans and hearing from them their struggles and what they need and how we can help. We hope to do something like that again in the near future. It's something that we planned on doing a part 2, so to speak, maybe go from city to city around the country, but the pandemic threw a little bit of a wrench in all of that. But if you've seen the video, you've seen the face, you've seen Dominic Leon. Dominic served this country, did 4 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan and 1 in Kosovo. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he's from the 82nd Airborne, right?
That's right.
Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Yeah, that's right. Old Fort Bragg.
So, Dom, I want to hear a little bit about how you're feeling watching all this on TV. Obviously, doing 4 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then sitting at home and seeing all of this unfold. How does that make you feel as a veteran who's over there?
Well, I mean, to say that I'm disappointed and hurt and betrayed is probably an understatement. Based on what I see is going on and, having that veteran perspective, we get a little bit more intel as far as background and what's going on, because a lot of us still have communication with men and women who are still active duty. And we get that inside perspective, and things may be going on a little bit deeper than we realize. And it's very sad, when you get this president saying that this is one of the greatest evacuations, that could not be farther from the truth. I mean, this is such a travesty. It's horrible. And what hurts the most is that it's almost like, based on what's going on, you take the men and women who served in that area of the world, and then you see what's going on now, and it really begs the question, why did we do what we do? Did this president just take every little bit of those 20 years that we were there and just throw it down in the trash, and completely disregard our service and just hand it right back to the Taliban, which is what we were fighting in the first place when we got there? And it saddens me. It's almost, you see what's going on, and you think of, like you said, all the men and women that came back scarred and hurt, and, and all the men and women that didn't come back, were their lives sacrificed in vain, all because this president doesn't know how to manage an evacuation. And the evacuation is still not even done. We've got, last I heard reported, we had 13 dead Marines, and we've got almost between 10 and 20,000 Americans still stranded there. and he's calling it the best evacuation ever. This is horrible, and I just, it's a sad thing to hear on the news, and it's very, very difficult to understand on how a country, our country that we love, because you set the country on the president's shoulders, and so you think to yourself, how could we allow this to happen? How could this be happening? This is a devastating event.
Do you think that the mainstream media is covering this fairly or assigning responsibility in a fair manner?
Well, I mean, of course they're not. However, surprisingly enough, I think the mainstream media is very slowly, if you pay attention to what's going on, even in these, quote unquote liberal media, even if you pay attention to what they've been saying recently, they seem to start to come out and really challenge the president on these issues. And surprisingly enough, CNN, out of all of them, has been really attacking the president, by questioning his actions and challenging him with very interesting questions, to which he has either no response to, or he has the rehearsed response, which is, let's just blame the former president. Let's just blame, former President Donald Trump. But say, well, that's kind of a cop-out. You're the one in charge, and this is all happening under you. If within the past 3-4 years, if anything has happened, for a while there, we were doing really well. And then January 20th, 2021, that all kind of stopped. And it's just been getting worse and worse.
Now, Dom, we've got a question here from one of our listeners, Scott. Says, Dom, do you think that this is a deliberate bungling to put Americans in harm's way and to give the Taliban a fully working air base and our military equipment? The number that I heard was that they got in excess of $80 billion worth of equipment. Is that what you heard, Philly Chris?
Yeah, it was a huge number, and it's just crazy to watch. I saw them flying around one of our Blackhawks today. They released some footage of the Taliban actually operating a Blackhawk. So, yeah,
I mean, they
sickening.
couldn't have asked to be outfitted any better than that, right? I mean, that wasn't going to happen. You would not be able to imagine some kind of a scenario where they would be outfitted like that overnight, right? If somebody would have told you this 2 weeks ago, that overnight they're going to have this kind of equipment, you would have said, you're nuts. There's no way that's even possible. And now we see it.
Right.
So getting back to the question, which is for you, Dom, I don't want to overstep over here. But do you think that perhaps part of this was deliberate?
I mean, that's hard to say. I can't speculate on whether it was deliberate or not. Was it very, very badly and poorly executed? Absolutely, 100%. Very poorly executed, and that responsibility comes from the top down, and there is no way around that. That's the way that works. I'd also like to touch on what you guys were just talking about, of the amount of weaponry that was left behind. If you guys remember, about a week ago, I can't remember the name of the gentleman, but they were asking him in the press conference about how much was left behind. And he stated that as of right now, they don't know how much exactly was left behind. And I can tell you right now that that's absolute nonsense. After all of my years in the military, the number one thing the military, any branch of the military, Marines, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, you name it, Air Force, the one thing that they can always tip their hat to is that they're very good with logistics. They know what goes in, they know what comes back. They know who has what, they know who needs what, and they know what they have all together. So based on what was left there, nothing is categorized just haphazardly. Everything is done very methodically. The logistics are done, to the penny, because that's the way the military is run. So as far as knowing what is left there, I guarantee you they have a very, very good idea, if not an exact number, of what was left behind.
So people who are, if they're not giving up that information right now, people who are coming up with these numbers that we've heard throughout various news sources, they're sort of reverse engineering, you think? We're taking a look at, okay, they've got this, which is worth about this, and they've got this, which is worth this amount. Do you think that's how they're coming to those conclusions?
I think so. I think based on the videos and based on some intel that could possibly be coming from other sources, they're kind of reverse engineering the math and trying to put together what's what. However, that's never going to work because we don't know exactly what they have, but the military does.
Right.
But that kind of information is not going to be released to the public. It's only them. They're going to keep that knowledge to themselves, and for very good reason. But
the bottom line is that because they have a reason to keep it confidential, most of us will never know the extent of the loss. Is that fair to say?
That is extremely fair to say.
So what kind of problems do you think this poses, not only for the people who are over there right now, right, the Americans who are over there and people who are in trouble, but for America in the bigger picture with this Taliban takeover? I mean, we just saw today a couple of bombings taking place over by the airport out there, right? And I think that a lot of us are thinking this is the tip of the iceberg.
Well, it wasn't just the airport. You had bombings at Abbey Gate. You also had the bombing over by it's called the Banbar Hotel. I can't remember. In those two specific areas, there are a lot of Americans that are in those two areas, because Abbey Gate is pretty much, it's the gate. It's exactly what you think it is. It is the point of entry into Kabul and out. And then you've got the hotel where a lot of people are staying. There's a lot of Americans there. And then don't forget the Americans that are just in the general area outside. Those are not, those were not just haphazard attacks. Those are very deliberate, because they know where the Americans are. Speaking of which, I just saw today that President Biden just had the list of American names he wanted to exchange in the Taliban so they can get him back. I said, wow, this could not be a more stupid approach to things, because you just basically gave the Taliban a very specific list of names for people they can now search for within these Americans that are still there. And God knows what their intentions are going to be when they find them. I mean, we already see what's going on. What do we think is going to happen once they find them? And you also have to think, this is the Taliban. We've been fighting them for 20 years. What kind of retribution or vengeance are they going to hold these Americans who are out there accountable for? What kind of devastating things are they going to do to them based on the 20 years of us being there?
Are we going to start to see videos of them torturing Americans and things of that nature? I hate to even think about that, but
it's without question. It pains me to even think that this is still, after 20 years, a possibility. But this is the reality of it. And based on this completely bungled evacuation, which, I mean, in any other circumstance, this would have been a very, not easy, but a very kind of typical thing that the military, no matter the branch, the military is very, they're very well trained and adapted to do these kind of things. They already know. The problem was that it was so rushed, and the left hand wasn't talking to the right hand, so to speak, and it was pretty much chaos everywhere. And to see the images that we saw in these videos is just saddening, because it could have been done so much better, so much easier, if the planning had been done correctly.
Well, that's, I think, why a lot of people start to go towards speculation that maybe there's something more going on here, because we got a comment here from Rusty Shackelford. I believe that this was on purpose. Anyone with the sense that God gave geese would know not to just pull out before getting American civilization and equipment to safety first. I think he meant civilians. But
civilians.
we've got people who are saying this was botched so badly that they can't possibly be this incompetent. Does that make sense why people are going there with their line of questioning?
Sure. I mean, but that also, people who understand how the military works, I guarantee they understand what I'm talking about. I mean, I see what they're saying. I see how the speculation could be there as whether or not this was done on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this was done on purpose, but I do believe that the people in charge of this evacuation, listen, people have an ability to make oceans out of puddles. You can make something so simple turn into a complete debacle because you overestimate your ability to do it. And if the higher ups are not paying attention, and in this case they did not, they bungled something that was and should have been a very simple and easy strategic evacuation of these American citizens, the troops, and our equipment that they left behind. Now, as far as it being deliberate, I can't. If in any case, if this was ever proven to be deliberate, this would have been the biggest case of treasonous activity I have ever heard in my life. And if that's the case, it is probably going to be the saddest thing that any man, woman, and child in this country is ever going to hear for a long time, because this level of treason, if this was done deliberately, it is a level of treason beyond our comprehension. Because now you've got literal blood on your hands, Mr. President. I saw somebody said now President Biden has his own Benghazi, and it's this evacuation. But it's not just him.
But you see the way that the people on the left always respond the same way, whether it's this or Benghazi. When they asked Hillary Clinton about the lives lost, she was like, "Well, what difference does it make at this point?" And when they asked Biden about the people falling from the plane,
happened 4 days ago.
Right? Yeah. He's like, "Oh, come on, man, that was 4 or 5 days,"
yeah.
which it wasn't 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, it was only a couple days. Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah.
But that's the way they respond to these sorts of things. Like, will you just leave me alone already? It's just it blows my mind that they respond like this and they get away with responding like this.
Every time I hear them respond like that, when Hillary did it, and now President Biden responded like that, doesn't it? It always sounds like when you witness a husband and wife arguing, and then the husband just says, "Well, why don't you just leave me alone? That was last week. That doesn't even count anymore." It's like, only because you don't have a logical response to come back with, so you just go to that defensive mode and say, "Oh, that happened a long time ago. Doesn't count." Well, yes, it counts.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Dom, on the 11 days that they talk about? The intelligence gathering and the mistakes they made. Where they said it would definitely not happen over from a Friday to a Monday, which basically is exactly what happened. And I mean, it seems to me that with all the technology and the intelligence, and you spent some time over there, so maybe you could speak to this a little bit. But how is it that they could, miss that so significantly, I guess, and not respond to it better? That's why I think two people are questioning whether or not it was intentional, because it just seems crazy. Yeah.
These whole things, these deadlines with 11 days or 13 days, etc. In all my years in the military, you could never put a deadline on something this large, because it takes so much time and careful and strategic and quiet planning. None of this happened quietly. To have all these people having to leave Afghanistan while simultaneously having the Taliban on our heels, having to get out, it begs the question, how did they know ahead of time that these things were happening? How did they know? What intel did the Taliban have?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good point.
So, because, I mean, these things don't just happen by chance.
Sure.
How did all of this happen so coordinated and in such a very kind of coincidence, by chance, how did this happen? So, you have to also see it from both sides. One thing I will tell you that I think many Americans don't quite understand when it comes to people in the Middle East, our concept of time is very different to theirs. We may think 20 years is, 20 years is a career. You can work and retire in 20 years' time. But the reality is, to people in the Middle East, 20 years is a drop in the bucket.
Right.
They'll wait and they'll whatever
I think they said decades ago or years ago that they would just wait us out. Isn't that what they've said in the past? Right. Yeah. That's their mentality, right?
Absolutely. And if they can't wait us out, their children will wait us out. They train their lives, their entire lives, and their families are based on how they believe in what they believe in, and how they pass on their information from generation to generation. And 20 years for us it's a career. You can work and retire in 20 years. You can be a military personnel, a police officer, whatever, do 20 years, retire. For them, that's nothing. They'll wait as long as they need to. But the biggest question is, within the 20 years, they could have done anything. But they decided to attack us and attack these people during an evacuation. And that whole thing happening simultaneously begs the question, which I understand why people would say, did this happen kind of deliberately? Was this a setup? I can see how people would think that way. But you have to ask, what did the Taliban know beforehand in order to plan this the way they did? It didn't, and I don't think it was deliberate, but you also have to find out what they knew.
Yeah, we've got a couple of comments over here before I get to them. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. You've got Jeremy Miller, another veteran, piping in. The Taliban's using that list to kill Afghans that helped America. Any interpreters on that list are being killed. And putting targets on these people's backs is exactly what it's doing. Crazy. We've got Scott asking another question. Dom, can the military commanders who turned away Americans at that gate be held accountable? And he also comments in to what you said, treason doesn't even come close to what it would be.
They can't turn away any American citizen coming in to be evacuated can for no reason be turned away, especially if you can prove, because in many cases, you have to prove who you are, because a lot of people who are out there are not wearing a uniform, and so they have to prove who they are. They're not just going to take anybody just because you look like you sound like you're from New York. You have to prove who you are.
How you doing? Right?
Right.
Hey, let me through.
Hey. Yankees all the way. No, you have to prove who you are.
Lines from one of the movies, right?
Oh yeah. So what I'm thinking about now is we have all these reports about, we have to do X, Y, and Z for all these Afghan refugees. So why do we have to do anything until the Americans are evacuated from there first? We can take care of whoever we need to take care of after the Americans that are there are back home and safe. Any other humanitarian things we can do after the Americans are back home and safe is very well and fine, but I don't understand why we're putting our Americans secondary to any Afghani refugees, when our people are still there. And listen, I don't know if you guys follow or if I'm allowed to even say the name David Harris Jr. I think that's his name on Instagram. He's been putting out these videos. It's horrible, the things we've been seeing, and it's not just, I understand they have these lists and some of the interpreters are on these lists, but it's more than those people. It's literally anybody who in any way, shape, or form had any kind of contact with Americans, or the Allied forces for that matter. It's not just the American soldiers, but it's the Australian Army, it's the British Army, Americans, Canadian. It's anybody who had access to them and helped them in any way, shape, or form are completely being decimated. So this list that has been provided to them now is it's sad that it's been provided. I think it was a very silly move, no strategy behind it. But it's more than that. There's a lot more people involved, more people than that are on that list, and they're just being decimated.
Yeah, it reminds me of during the pandemic when that memo was put out to the Philadelphia police saying they weren't going to arrest for certain crimes, including burglary, right? And it's like, why would you put that out there? Why would you do it that way? Obviously, that was a very stupid thing to do. No street smarts, no common sense among a lot of these people in these positions of power, unfortunately. Trump always said it, right? A lot of stupid people.
Let me use this example for you. I don't know if you remember when Obama was in office, and while we were in Afghanistan and Iraq, I remember Obama was saying things like, well, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And we would see this on TV while we were in country. And like, why are you giving away our plans? Like, why are you telling them what we're going to do ahead of time? Right. This is the dumbest strategy. I'm not going to play chess with you and tell you what my first 10 moves are going to be. Why are you telling on national TV where everybody can see you say, we're going to go here and we're going to do this, that, and there. I said, well, I might as well just walk through the door without any arms, without any firearms, and just say, hey guys, I'm here. Why don't you just shoot me now? Because, you already knew I was coming.
Yeah, Trump would have handled this entirely.
Where's my last meal?
Yeah.
Come on. So it's like now you give her and it's crazy because Obama did it. Now Biden's doing it. These Democrats, are these presidents, these Democrat presidents, they must be on sniffing glue or something. Where do they get these ideas of like,
That would
let's just
explain a lot for Biden.
Yeah, it's like, well, listen, hey, if you ever sniff children and little girls with their hairspray, who knows what chemicals are in these people's hairspray that he's been sniffing?
Say that again. I
talked
talked over you on that one. Say that again. I talked over you. I want everybody to hear exactly what you
said. We all know what sniffing glue does to you. Well, after years of sniffing kids and little girls with their hairspray, who knows what chemicals are in these things? And he's been sniffing this stuff for years. We all know the damage sniffing glue does. Who knows what's in Biden's mind? Dementia's been accelerated by all these chemicals he's been sniffing for years.
Yeah. I think you're onto something, Dom.
That would explain a whole lot, right? There's been a lot of question marks over these last couple of years that would make a whole lot of sense in that case.
He doesn't even know where he is half the time.
Yeah. Well, that's incredibly obvious. Often loses his train of thought and spouts nonsense sentences that are not sentences.
Right.
Like somebody I know sometimes, right?
What was it like on the ground over there, Dom? Like for our listeners, what
hold on.
Like
before we get to that, Chris, I definitely want to ask him about that. But before we get to that, Dom, I want to ask you, when you're talking about doing this the right way, how long do you think something like that would have taken? Are we talking about another year, another 2 years, another 5 years, or another few months?
No, I wouldn't say a year. A year total, but as far as evacuating people, it's hard to say because we need the exact numbers of people who are there. But the priority is always the people. The non-military personnel, which there are a lot, and protecting those who helped us, like the interpreters and other people. Then after that, once you've secured the people, then you secure the equipment. The soldiers are still going to be there on the ground to protect everything because they don't want the enemy to get their hands on these armaments that are there. But first and foremost, it's always the people. Then once the people are out of there, then you have to go and you have to protect and secure and get those armaments out of there, which would be the helicopters and all the firearms and all the ammunition, etc. We don't want something. I don't know if you guys know, the Somali pirates years ago, when they came out, when they first started doing all the things that they were doing, people were saying, well, how are they getting all these AK-47s? And then they discovered that, the Russians down there had left, annexes full of these weapons. Crazy. So in essence, are we doing the same thing by leaving all our weapons in this, in this area? And I got to tell you, the Taliban and the people in the Middle East, they don't need a lesson on how to shoot. They know how to shoot. You just got the firearm in their hand and they'll aim. Especially if they think you're the enemy, they'll point it right at you. They're not stupid. They know what they're doing. They know the area. They know the terrain. They know the language. They know the country.
Heck, they point their guns at each other all the time, I noticed.
Right, yeah.
They could use muzzle discipline,
yeah, not very good muzzle discipline.
Just by speculating whether or not they helped us.
Now, Dom,
yes,
I do want to ask this. It sounds to me like you think that the exit maybe wouldn't have taken much longer if planned the right way. But do you think that regardless of if you were able to get everybody out safely, that ultimately Taliban would have taken over anyhow? Was that a foregone conclusion at this point?
Well, like I said before, I don't know if they would have taken over. But I know that if the evacuation had been executed correctly, we would have had a lot less casualties because, again, we're only seeing the 13 plus Marines that have been killed and countless other people being injured by these bombs at Abbey Gate and at the hotel and etc. But, excuse me, let me backtrack into my train of thought here.
No, it sounds to me like even if they would have eventually taken over, we just made it a whole lot easier, right? All right. So
Without a doubt.
regardless of whether that would have happened,
Why wouldn't we
kind of
destroy the
accelerated the
equipment?
process here.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. I'm just saying,
Sorry to interrupt, but why?
if we had done it correctly, there would be a lot less casualties. And but to that same point, yeah, they would have, because like I said before, their patience and the way they have time, they'll just wait us out. And as soon as we pulled out of that area, it was bound to happen. They were going to go back in there and they were going to be back to, status quo, just like it was before. So this entire time, while we thought we were doing one thing, the Taliban kind of retreats and they take their time. They regroup their forces. They regroup their personnel, and plus they're getting support by whoever they're getting, because they're not just doing this haphazardly. They do have support from outside sources. And, we can't speculate who these sources are, but we all kind of have an idea.
I don't think enough people are paying attention to that, though. Chris, I think you had a question you wanted to get in.
Yeah, I just, as we were talking about all the equipment left behind, Dom, what are your thoughts on why we wouldn't have destroyed it, or, at some point? It reminds me of when the Navy SEAL team went in and took out bin Laden and they crashed one of those stealth helicopters. And I know that's a kind of a unique situation, but those guys are literally in the middle of a combat mission under fire, and they still took the time to destroy, that helicopter that crashed on the wall. And, we have the air support already in Afghanistan. Why wouldn't they just, knock those bases out, destroy the equipment? Again, I think that's why people are questioning whether or not this was done intentionally in some way. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it seems crazy that we would leave equipment behind.
Well, that helicopter from when they got bin Laden, that's a different story. That's not like your typical.
That was the new stealth helicopter, top secret, I think, right?
It was. I'll put it to you this way: it doesn't even exist.
That's right. It still doesn't exist, right? Yeah.
Doesn't exist. Those guys flew into there because they're all Supermen. They didn't take any helicopter. It doesn't exist.
Gotcha.
All right.
TR-3B, one of the UFOs. I know.
Now that we got that out of the way, the reason we don't destroy that equipment is, I put it to you this: a lot of the equipment that we had out there, and a lot of equipment that they have, each piece of these, like one of these helicopters, goes into the millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And it's not the armies, or it's not the military, any branch of the military. We're not in the business of destroying our own equipment. We salvage what we can when we can. And anytime there is equipment that can be taken in and brought back out, we're going to do that. In very specific situations, do we destroy equipment? But it's not all the time. We don't do that. Well, the military doesn't do that, all willy-nilly. It's a very well planned out strategic move. However, think of it this way: if it had been done correctly, and that equipment was slated to be destroyed, because this whole evacuation was bungled in such a way and handled so poorly, if that were the intention of destroying the equipment, they never got to it, obviously, because they were so busy completely messing this up.
So maybe that was part of the plan, because I understand what you're saying, that I wouldn't be thrilled about in excess of $80 billion of taxpayer money being set on fire, essentially. Sure. But given the choice between that and leaving all this stuff and putting into the hands of these bad guys, and also losing how many lives as a result of it, as well as in the process of it, it's frankly an easy decision. I mean,
of course, if it comes down, if it's to what, like you say, and if it comes down to that, listen, just destroy the equipment and let's get the people out of here. But again, the military doesn't function that way. Everything has to be strategically planned, step 1 through step 20. Mm-hmm. And this is why this happened so poorly, because step 1 was probably executed so poorly that by the time they got to step 3, they were all walking into each other. They were like the Mets. They couldn't get out of their own way. Right. You have to properly plan these things. And I promise you, this was properly planned, but extremely poorly executed. And the responsibility for this can only go to the higher ups.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Makes sense. Yeah. Thanks.
Gotcha. We got a couple of more comments coming in over here.
I'm intrigued by Randy's comments.
Randy says, I've been listening to former CIA.
Soda.
It's just cream. It's just cream soda.
Ladies and gentlemen, cream soda.
You don't want to get kicked off the air again, right? Randy says, I've been listening to a former CIA operations officer who lives in Susquehanna and still has contacts in Afghanistan. We are being lied to big time. The flights out of Afghanistan have already been stopped, and the gates have been welded shut. What else do we have here? KPK wants to know, was the equipment left for the Afghan military? That's an interesting question. I've not heard anybody ask that.
One of our listeners mentioned that last week in the comments, and that does make sense. I guess technically some of it really isn't ours anymore, but at the same time, I think when it's going to fall into enemy's hands, right?
Yeah.
No. We're not. America is not in the business of just giving away equipment to different countries. We will train. Americans will go in there and we'll train different armed forces for different situations. Mm-hmm. But we're not just going to hand over equipment. You know, the governments make deals with other governments, say, hey, we have this surplus equipment. We'll sell it to you for or this, or we'll exchange it for X, Y, and Z. But we'll never just hand them over pieces of equipment. We will, however, train them on how to use certain pieces of equipment. So if they do acquire this equipment within an exchange or governmental purchase, then they'll know how to operate it.
We've got a comment from Jeremy over here. Before we get to that, for those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. Dom, you'll appreciate this comment over here. It says, Tim Kennedy went to Afghanistan on his own dime to save people, and the 82nd 1st Brigade commander is pissed about it. F that guy. Oh, Dom, that you got a couple of layers there to how you relate to that, right?
Of course.
Do I call you a former mixed martial arts coach/fighter, or are you still involved to such a degree that former is a slap in the face?
To be honest
retired?
Right now, I'm not really coaching anybody as to actually fight, whether it be amateur or pro. I don't do that anymore. But I was actually going to bring this up later on in the show. I am involved now with the non-for-profit. I don't have the name of the non-for-profit yet. I actually spoke to the gentleman yesterday. He's got the non-for-profit here in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I'm going to be working with him pretty soon with the outreach for this kind of coaching and getting the homeless veterans and veterans in need more involved in different activities as far as getting out. And I'm going to use those skills to try to reach out to them and see what I can do to help them in that arena. But as far as training everybody to fight, I can tell you I'm retired from that. I don't do that.
What about Tim Kennedy going over there? You going to hitch a ride with him?
So, hey, listen, man, Tim Kennedy just has to call me or say whatever he wants, or at least tell me where he is, and I'll show up. But I can say the reason that the higher ups in the 82nd are probably upset is because, remember, Tim Kennedy he's a Green Beret. He's an Army Ranger. He knows what he's doing. He loves this country. He loves the people of this country, and he recognizes when people are in need of help. I think the only reason that the commander of the 82nd would be upset is more about ego than anything, on thinking, well, if the 82nd can't handle it, why do you think you can come in and do any better? Because the 82nd has such a rich history, throughout the years that, of course, your ego is going to be a little bit higher. But listen, if he's upset that Tim Kennedy's there, I think, listen, right now, this is not the time or the place for egos or feelings to be hurt. You have to work together because we all have a common goal. And that's what he should be focusing on right now, not whether or not people are out there trying to help. Because listen, we could all use any help that comes our way. And if Tim Kennedy's out there doing that, you know what? God bless him. God be with him. I hope he's protected. I hope he gets there and does what he's going to do. And he gets back safely with as many people saved as he can.
You're going to see a bat signal when you go outside your door now. You're going to have to hop on the helicopter with him.
Yeah, let's say, hey, man, that's it. Just throw me a line. I'm out.
Yeah, one of those SEAL Team 6 helicopters. You need one.
Yeah, anything, man. Well, one of those SEAL Team 6 helicopters that doesn't exist. Remember.
I think we've got a question from Liberty typing in. Liberty?
Yeah, I have a question. So I was hearing a few reports coming out from the press conference and then from Jen, the press secretary today, And they're basically, I guess there's some talks of them relying on Taliban to help protect the airport. And, they're obviously the checkpoints to get to the airport. And Jen was kind of defending it, saying we don't trust the group, but it's also reality that they control a large part of Afghanistan. So as somebody who's been there, what can we believe of what they're saying? Like, how are we even in any sense trusting the Taliban to protect us, even though ISIS-K and ISIS is apparently both of our enemies, supposedly, but can you put any, any analysis to that?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
You're the only one on the program who's been to Afghanistan. So yes, she's asking you.
The Taliban is
what
not our
do
friend.
you
Chris
think?
went there on vacation a couple of years ago, but that doesn't count, right?
Oh yeah. The Taliban is not our friend. They're not there to help us. What they are doing essentially is they're following orders from their higher ups. They're not our friends. They're not there to help us. They are there for one reason. If we are trying to get out of that area, they're only monitoring our whereabouts and seeing what direction our people are headed in. And that could be a dangerous thing, because if you can get everybody that's over there, everybody that's supposed to be evacuated, if you can get them in one place, think about the damage you could do. Mm-hmm. So they're more or less just monitoring our movements and our whereabouts, but they're not necessarily trying to help us get out or go across any kind of borders or to any safety. It's more just, monitoring where we're going, who we're with, how many people are with us, and what our purposes are. But more than anything, it's who we are. Who are you? Are you an American? What are you, what are you doing here? What's your position? What do you do for the government?
Do we have any other questions from the gang about this specific situation? Because I want to backtrack here and ask a little bit more about Dom, have the audience get to know him a little bit better. Is there anybody who's got any other questions for the good of the order before we go ahead and transition into that? I don't want to cut anybody off if you got something on the tip of your tongue.
I'm good, Mike. Yeah, thanks.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. Jeremy Miller says the story is Kennedy brought 400 people to the airport, and the 82nd commander said this isn't the Tim Kennedy show, and then kicked those 400 people out of the airport. Holy mackerel. Crazy. Yeah. All right. So, Dom, let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to know a little bit more about where you grew up, how you grew up, and ultimately how you made that decision to go to the military. So why don't we start with that? Where were you raised? What was your childhood like?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, as you know, and specifically in the Coney Island, Bay Ridge, Bensonhurst area. That's where I was born. That's where I was raised my first 8 years of my life. And then I, because of family circumstances and things going on, I ended up going to Puerto Rico with my mother's side of the family. And I grew up in Puerto Rico. I went to school there. By the time I graduated high school, even before my graduation, I had tricked my grandmother into signing the release papers to join the Army because at the time I had what they call island fever, and you're just looking for an excuse to get off of the island, because once you do the same thing 10 times, it's like, all right, that's enough of this.
But what was it like growing up over there? So you start off in New York and then you end up over there. How old were you when you ended up in Puerto Rico?
I was still 8 years old, just turning 9, and it was rough. I didn't know the language. I felt very out of place. And then you have to adjust to a new culture.
Right. So what's that like? What kind of activities do you participate as a kid and a teenager over there?
Well, the first few years, the main activity was fighting, because I was always getting picked on because I was the American who didn't know Spanish. So they would always pick on me, and I'd have to end up getting into fights with the other kids until eventually I got accustomed to what was going on and made some friends, and then that stopped. But it was rough, and I didn't really see any other American kids until about maybe the 8th grade, and that's when the more Americans started coming in to say, hey, more New Yorkers, wonderful.
Were they good fighters over there?
No, man, they all ganged up on me like a bunch of wimps, because I was always bigger than everybody.
Right.
I'm in the 8th grade, and I got kids that are in high school trying to fight me. I'm like, guys, I'm in the 8th grade. He's like, well, but you're like the same size I am. So I
You've got your
understand
Power
that, but
Rangers
I'm
lunchbox.
literally
Your
12
Power
years
Rangers
old, and you're
lunchbox.
16.
You're just a
What?
man-looking guy with a Power Rangers lunchbox. You're
Yeah,
a
man.
lot younger than you look.
Yeah, it's like these 16-year-old kids want to fight me, and I'm like, guys, I'm 12. What are you doing?
That's
And
great.
and then growing up in Puerto Rico, there's the things you have access to and the things that you do are very limited. So it's very easy to get bored quickly. And my entire life in Puerto Rico, I always felt that I was out of place and I didn't quite belong there. And I knew that my only two options to get off the island were to either join the military or go to a university that was outside, probably in the mainland United States. At the time, the university was not an option. I wasn't a very bright kid. I didn't really do well in high school. I wasn't that kind of. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I was an A student. Of course not. I was a D plus C student. So college at the time was not even a thought. So I was like, well, the only thing I can do is join the military. And now I look back, I said, man, at least I wish I knew what the reserves were because I would have done that. But no, active duty it was. My grandmother, I said, Ma, this is the paperwork for the graduation. She didn't even look at it. She just signed it. I'm like, wonderful. Brought it back to the recruiter. He says, okay, you're still 17, so go ahead and do your little graduation thing, and then when you're done, we're out of here. I said, all right. Told my grandmother and my grandfather about 2 weeks before I was going to be shipped out to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Says, Ma, I says, I joined the Army. Says, no, you didn't. I said, yeah, and I leave in 2 weeks. So the first thing they did typically is just beat the crap out of me. Very upset, and then they didn't talk to me for the rest of the week. And then that last week, it was, emotional and this and that. And then I left, and then South Carolina, here I come.
So, other than you said you weren't a very good student and involved in a lot of fights growing up, what other things occupied your teenage years leading up to that? Were you playing sports and stuff like that? Were you involved in martial arts or?
I've always been involved in the martial arts. I've always been doing Taekwondo pretty much my entire life. I've been involved in one form or another. I've got a black belt in Taekwondo, but I mean, you can get a black belt. I mean, it's a nice thing to have, but it's not like this, crazy thing. But I've always been involved. I did a little bit of wrestling, been in Taekwondo, boxing, because Puerto Rico's big on boxing. And then, as you know, I continued that in the military. And then when you and I met, Mike, you already know that I was involved with Sal. That's where we met almost 15 years ago. And I was, getting my things, doing my things with him. And then, but it's always been some involvement to some degree. And as you know, then I progressed and I became an MMA coach, and I coached you. I coached, other guys, Nick and Ali, and I've always been involved.
So let's back it up. So you get into the military, and where did you say you went first?
Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
And what year was that?
1997.
Wow. And what was going on at that time?
You mean in the world or just?
Yeah. What was going on as someone who was in the service at that time? What was that like? Because that's pre 9/11.
It's pre 9/11, and Clinton was still the president, I believe. And we had just learned about I think the whole Monica Lewinsky. I think it come out or just come out or hadn't come out quite yet, I believe. And no, it did come out, and I think that was like the big talk of the town. And but really, when we got to the military, all that stuff was kept quiet. They don't really, even if you don't like your leaders, you're not really inclined to talk bad about them. Although now I'd say different, but but when you're in active duty, right, you have to see the chief and the commander in chief in such a way as if, just as you have to see your company and unit commanders, these are the immediate superiors, and if you ever see them, you pop to attention and you salute, even if you don't like them, and even if you don't like their politics, you still have to respect the position.
Right. And did you enjoy being in the military from the very beginning, or how did?
I loved it. It was, if all the places that I've been and I didn't feel that I felt that I was out of place in the military, I never felt out of place. I felt like after all these years, this is where I belong. This is what I should be doing. I grew up when I was living in New York. We didn't have much. We were relatively poor, but I did have a couple of VHS tapes of GI Joe cartoons, and I was addicted to them. And my father would buy me GI Joes in Toys R Us over in Bay Ridge. I'm sure you know where I'm talking about.
Sure.
So we would go over there.
Caesar's Bay
Yeah.
over there.
So we would go in and we would buy 10 or 20 GI Joes, and so that's what I always thought of, and when I joined the military, I always remembered playing with these GI Joes, and I was thinking to myself, this is what I want to do. The only time I didn't enjoy my time in the military is my initial job. I used to be a parachute rigger. 92 Romeo is the MOS designation, and I was a parachute rigger in Fort Bragg. And when the recruiters sell you this position, say, "Oh, you're going to be in a good building with air conditioning, and you're going to be jumping out of planes and packing parachutes," they make it sound so glamorous. So the jumping out of planes part was great, but packing parachutes, 25 parachutes a day, I says, "You guys are crazy doing this every single day. You guys are out of your minds. This is the most boring, dull waste of my time and what I can possibly be doing ever. I need to do something different." So I did that for about a year and a half, and then I knew I could reclass. So I spoke to my company commanders and I said I want to reclass to a different MOS. They try to talk you out of it a little bit, but eventually I got what I wanted, and I became a 12 Bravo, a combat engineer. And you see on TV these engineers building bridges. Well, we were the opposite. We were the guys who blew stuff up. Give me a door, give me a bridge, give me whatever. I'll blow it up. I'll blow it up real nice.
Nice.
And so, when was the first time you went over?
Well, 1999 in Kosovo was the first time I ever got to go overseas for anything like that. But that was I got to tell you, from a perspective of somebody going in for the first time and seeing what it was like to serve overseas in this kind of an environment, the level of strategic planning, and very careful movement by everybody involved, because it wasn't just us, but the United Nations to a degree was also involved. So the level of planning and strategy behind everything was fascinating to me. It was said, wow, this whole thing is moving like a well-oiled machine, and people know where they're going, where they have to be, who they have to see, what they have to do when they get there. It was flawless. Don't get me wrong, it had its issues and there was problems here and there, but the movement and the strategy behind it was fascinating to me, and it just reinforced my thought to myself, thinking I did the right thing. Joining the military was the right decision, because this is where I belong. This is what I need to be doing. And after that, after we got back from Kosovo, we had to go to Honduras for some aid work. They got volunteers who speak Spanish to go to Honduras for aid, because they got hit with very bad flooding, landslides, and it was devastating to that country. So they got volunteers to go who speak Spanish to help and assist with their aid, and I was one of the people who went. And that was quite an experience. And then after that, it was a little bit of downtime, and then 9/11 came around, and then that's when. And actually, I remember, they say you always remember where you were when big things happen. I was sitting on my childhood bed in my room in my house in Puerto Rico, and I'm watching TV going, man, this Bruce Willis movie sucks. Like, what is
Oh, man.
like, what the hell's going on? Then you realize, like, this is real. Like, oh my God, something's going on. And then I looked at my ma. I said, "Ma, I'm telling you, the phone's gonna ring in a few minutes, and this vacation's gonna be over." And sure enough, within, I want to say, less than 2 hours, that phone is ringing and said, "Are you home?" I said, "I'm home." They said, "You stay right where you are. We're going to come and get you." Wow. And they sent vehicles from Fort Buchanan. They come to my house. They come and pick me up. And then from there, we left. We went from my house to Fort Buchanan. Fort Buchanan, we went to the airport right there in San Juan and flew me right back to Fort Bragg. Well, they flew into the airport adjacent to right there in that area, and then I got picked up and made my way back to Fort Bragg. And we were on immediate standby because we were trying to get briefings on what was going on and what our strategy going into the situation was going to be. But everything, again, this one more time, it was a perfect example of how everything was so perfectly coordinated. And you could just see the machine moving in such a smooth way going. Everybody knew what they were supposed to do and where we were going to go. Nobody was lost. Everybody knew what we had to do. Now, our entry into the country, was it strategically planned and we made no mistakes? I can't say that. It was always a mistake here or there. But still, nothing can be, I mean, going into the country, it was the level of strategy involved was great. And again, it just reinforced in me, like, this is what I'm meant to be doing. My entire career, I loved it, and I never questioned what I was doing. I know that when I was there, it was what I was supposed to be doing, not just for myself, but for this country. And the level of camaraderie I had with the men and women that I served with was tremendous, and nothing can compare to it.
So I think that this leads into a question that Chris had. I did cut you off because I wanted to sort of get there chronologically if we could.
I'm sorry, I got long-winded answers, so I apologize.
No, great. They're great answers. We want to hear from you. That's why we've got you on the program. We kicked you off. We didn't like you. Thought you were boring. We'd tell you, take a hike. Go eat a bowl of mustard. We do that with many of our guests. No. So Chris, you were asking about what it was like being in Afghanistan. I'll let you go ahead and ask it the way you'd like to, because I don't want to put words in your mouth or misarticulate it.
Yeah, no, that's I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah, I was just kind of curious for, us here, people who have not been in the military, and what it's really like to be there on the ground. I mean, you see things on TV, but obviously you could give us more perspective on what it's really like, to spend that much time over there and interact with the people. I would imagine at some point you probably dealt with the Afghanis, and I don't know if you dealt with Al-Qaeda at all, but what that was like for you.
Well, I'll tell you this, the first impression you get as soon as you get there, the first thing that really hits you is the smell.
That's interesting. Okay.
It's a very striking, and it's a smell that lets you know you are no longer in Kansas.
Wow. Okay.
You are not anywhere near home.
Right.
And it's a very weird thing to get used to.
How long is that flight, Dom?
Oh, for us we left out of Pope Air Force Base. It's right in center of Fort Bragg. So
Forever?
What's that?
The flight was forever? Is that how long it took?
Oh yeah, forever hours ago. No, it's they do little jumps here and there, but we got from Pope Air Force Base in Fort Bragg. We left out of there. We landed in I think it's northern England. We fueled in northern England. Puddle jumped over to Germany. From Germany, we went down into Iraq.
Did England smell at all?
Afghanistan?
Afghanistan was afterwards.
Gotcha. So when I didn't want to cut you off when you were talking about the smell and being there, but that's just something I always think about is the plane ride there, because I'm sure we've all had friends, or maybe some of our listeners have this, where people have this fear of flying. I don't know if you've ever flown with somebody who, no matter what, the flight can be going perfect and they're just terrified out of their minds for whatever reason. Some people are just like that. Got family members like that. And I have always thought in my mind, well, there are people who don't like flying at all. Could you imagine being on a flight and knowing it's going to take this many hours, and then when I land, I get to go be in a situation where people are trying to kill me and I'm fighting for my life? Right. That just seems like a very different kind of situation, right?
Oh yeah. Can you guys still see me? I don't know what just happened on my camera here.
You may have been frozen, unless you're staying very still with your eyes closed and your mouth open.
Moving around.
Why don't you try hit click that camera button and then click it again, because if you do it off and on, sometimes that resets it.
Yeah, no, I don't know what I just did here. So I've no idea.
Do you see the microphone and the camera on Skype?
I sure do, yeah.
Yeah, click that camera and then click it again. So it'll turn it off and on again.
Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on?
I will try that right now, sir.
Did you try clearing your browser cache and cookies?
I'll figure it out as long as you guys can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. There's still
All
a
right,
visual
so
of you.
let's go. So go back to the question, Mike. Can you say that one more time, shortened version?
Sure. So you always, I think about people who have a general fear of flying, and then you couple that with, that, okay, I've got this flight ahead of me, but it's not just any flight, because when I get there, I have to get off and I'm going to have people who are trying to kill me. And that's going to be my life for however long.
Well,
What was that like?
Well, it's funny. People say they have a fear of flying. It's when you watch these videos and you see people on commercial airplane like American or whatever, and they're freaking out. And I said, man, if they freak out like this on these good planes, I wonder what they'd be like if they got onto an Air Force plane. Because if you've ever been in an Air Force plane, you want to jump out of that thing.
Why is that?
I'll tell you a story. We were doing an airborne operation into Sicily drop zone, which is right there inside of Fort Bragg, and we're in a C-130 Hercules. And we get these technicians that are in the back, and they're looking around. I get the one female technician. It's a night jump. She's got a little mag light looking up at the equipment, and the other technician comes over to her and says, "What's going on?" She says, "I don't know. I don't know what that noise is." My first thought was, "Oh my God, open the doors. Let me just jump out of this." I want to go down with the plane. Let me just jump out.
We should have a parachute. That's good.
I'm not sure. We'll find out soon enough, though, right? I guess, though, for somebody in your position, like Chris said, you got a parachute, but that's kind of what you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, not everybody's wearing a parachute, but trust me, that flight going from the U.S., overseas, those transcontinental flights, they're very long and very boring, and you try to figure out ways to entertain yourself, but most of it is just trying to lay down and sleep and just mind your business. You're not landing in a place where you're going to be in any immediate danger because, thank God for the Army Rangers that their main jobs, one of their main objectives is to get in there first and take over airfields and secure the areas. So when you get there, you're not going to be in any immediate danger. But like I said before, the one thing that gets you is first it's the smell, and then you start to look around and it's like, wow, what's that haze in the air? And you realize it's a combination of the heat and the moon dust. They have something out there we call moon dust because it was such fine dirt that you stepped on it, and it looked like when you saw people walking on the moon, that kind of dust that came up real fine. They have the same stuff, man. Our Humvees were getting stuck in it left and right. No matter where you go, you'd step in it and you'd go almost to your knee deep into this moon dust because you couldn't tell it from other terrain, and it was everywhere.
How do you describe the smell, Dom, if you were to try to describe it to somebody who's never been there? I'm just curious. What is
I'm not allowed to swear on this show, so it's hard to describe without swearing. I'll put it to you this way. So the burn pits, and a lot of veterans that are listening are going to know exactly what I'm talking about when I say burn pits. I myself, I'm in the burn pit registry. That's another thing that other veterans listening, tuning into the show are going to know what I'm talking about. And when I say burn pits, everything gets burned. And when I say everything, it's literally everything. Any garbage, any waste, anything and everything gets burned.
Gotcha. Okay.
And a lot of these burn pits are not far away from whatever FOB you're in, the forward operating base, or FOB we call them. So every FOB has their own set of burn pits because they have to get rid of this waste. And essentially it's exactly what you think it is. It's a big hole in the ground. And every piece of trash, all the latrine mess, all the old food, all old tires, you name it, it goes into this burn pit. Everything gets burned, and you're just inhaling that on top of the heat that's around you. And it's a different kind of heat. It's a heat that, if you don't pay attention to it, will burn you, but it doesn't necessarily exhaust you. It's not this sweltering, humid heat that we know here in America. Out there, it's a dry heat, but it's a very dangerous heat.
Okay.
Because you stop noticing it, and it dehydrates you, and it burns you very quick.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
And
Thanks for
You
for them to
mentioned
do.
that when you land, you weren't necessarily in immediate danger. Rusty Shackelford says you won't be dodging sniper fire like Hillary Clinton and Brian, right? They're just one of these corkscrew landings, and we had to duck and run away.
Oh my God!
But I
Listen,
think the bottom line is really that not necessarily in immediate danger, but it's not like you're going on vacation. I mean, you have people who are white knuckling on the plane, grabbing on and praying and doing the sign of the cross when they're going to Disney World, right?
oh, we
They're
had
heading down to
people. We
Florida
had
for Disney World. You're not going there.
no, we had people literally praying the entire flight,
Mm,
all the way from the moment we were leaving until we got there. It was nonstop prayer, and I can't blame them.
right.
You know, the level of anxiety of someone going into a situation like this. You know, we are essentially in a war, and we are going to war. So we're not going to play war. We're not going to go play freeze tag in the yard, and we're
Right.
not going to go do an exercise. This is actual war we're going to. So the level of anxiety of all the people that were on their way there could only have been heightened and accelerated, for lack of a better term. And if I saw, and I can't say that I did, but if I saw any of these men and women on their way there and they were cool as a cucumber, I would have been more afraid of them than the Taliban. I'm like, they're on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Whatever's going on.
It's like Animal Mother from Full Metal Jacket, right?
That's
Just
right.
get that
It's
look in
just,
his
you know,
eye.
That's
Remember that
it.
guy?
They were born to be where we're going, and they didn't want to be anywhere else.
Right. Right. We got a couple of comments here. SM Durso says the burn pit sounds pretty toxic. And
Extremely toxic.
Yeah, that sounds
DG
healthy.
says necrotic tissue and human waste, yummy. Oh, great. You always count on DG for one of those, right?
Listen, when I say literally everything was burned, I'm telling you, between human waste, medical waste, old
Right.
food, trash, everything.
Crazy.
Wow.
And then as it's burning, you're literally breathing all this in, and there's no escaping it. No matter where you are in the fob, you're breathing this in. So many servicemen and women are suffering right now in their respiratory system because of these burn pits.
It's crazy.
Now, obviously, going over there, been involved in multiple firefights, right?
Oh, of course. Well, I say of course, like everybody has, but
Yeah.
you know, well, when you're doing the jobs that we did, yeah, you're gonna, if you don't get shot at, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
You know, we got in multiple firefights the level of, you know, and you never get a warning. You never get like, hey guys, we're gonna start shooting at you in about 10 seconds. So
Yeah. They don't call you up and give you a list like Joe Biden or anything.
No, they don't
Right,
call you up and give you a list of 11 different places that you shouldn't hide because it's where we're going to shoot. Like, hey guys,
Right.
I wouldn't hide behind that wall if I were you. You know, I got a list right here if you want to check it out.
Mhm.
No, it's you know, it starts very abruptly, and these firefights, I mean, there's something about them when they start, time slows down, and it almost feels like you're trying to anybody who's ever tried to run in a pool knows the feeling of when these things start and you try to move quickly, you literally feel like you're in a pool and you're moving as quickly as you can, but you just can't seem to get far enough away, and everything slows down, and that level of fear comes and goes within a matter of seconds, because the fear is just what kind of gets your adrenaline going, and then the training and your trust in your fellow soldiers comes in, and you start to take action. You know, so everything happens within a matter of seconds, even if the firefight lasts 30 seconds, 5 minutes. Sometimes people have been pinned down for hours because you don't know where the fire is coming from. It's coming in from so many different directions, and you have to figure it out. You could be easily pinned down for hours. And, you know, when these things happen, the scary part was you never knew whether it was really over, even if the fire had stopped. Like, okay, nobody else is shooting. I wonder if they're done, or maybe they ran out of ammunition. Then you see the guys, they poke something out, and then sniper fire start coming out. So they go, oh man, you know, we're not ready to go yet. We got to figure out where this is coming from, and it would take some time. And that fear was always setting in, because no matter where you hid, or no matter where you took up a shelter to try to return fire, you never knew if you had an empty space behind you where fire could come from that direction as well.
Sure.
And it was hard to deal with because for as much as we were learning the terrain, these people knew it like the back of their hand. So we always felt that tension that no matter where we hid or no matter where we would set up to return fire, they knew where we were and they could just circle around us and take us all out whenever they wanted. It was that level of fear.
It's crazy. Yeah, you're in their backyard, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, when you're in your own house, you know where to get to the refrigerator when the lights are all out. You don't need somebody to tell you where it is, right?
Russ is really good at that, actually.
You know,
Dom, I want to say something, Dom, because at the Deadly Force seminars, and you've been to a couple of them, we talk a little bit about the physiological effects associated with the critical incident. And one of the things that Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman talks about in Grossman on Combat is that time dilations. I think that's pretty much exactly what you described, and you're talking about how things feel like they're in slow motion and everything like that. There are a lot of these physiological effects. I think a lot of gun owners don't realize all of these physiological effects that take place during that critical incident. Could you ever say that, thinking about the first time you're involved in that and first time some of your fellow soldiers are involved in that, can you ever say that you're truly prepared the first time it happens?
No. Being shot at is a very unnatural thing. Even with as many hours and days you get of training, for as many weeks and months you get of training, for as many years you can get of training, when bullets are coming at you, you feel like that, like a cartoon character kind of running from one side to the other, trying to figure out which way do I go, George? Which way do I go? Because I got to figure out where I'm getting shot at from. And that initial reaction is never a trained reaction. It's just all you know is get out of the way, get out of the line of fire, look for somewhere you can have shelter from the incoming fire. But first and foremost, you have to figure out where it's coming from. And you can't just stand there and say, well, hold on, let me throw some grass up in the wind and, figure out which way the wind's blowing. So figuring out where the fire is coming from and then also trying to figure out where to go to seek shelter has to happen within seconds. But also within those same seconds, by the time you figure out which way the position of the fire is coming from, it's already too late.
Yeah. And not to mention returning fire, right?
Right.
You have to return fire, and you also have to return fire in the right direction. And don't let fear overtake your ability to know what you're doing, because friendly fire is a thing, and if you're afraid, that can easily happen, and it has happened.
Does that have an impact on you? Dealing with that on so many occasions throughout the course of how many years?
Yes. It did. I mean, I never understood. I knew we were at war. And one of the things, in the beginning, I had a problem with it because, like I said, it was an unnatural thing. And my father said something to me because in my first tour, I came back and I spoke to my father, and he said something very, very serious to me. And my father's, he's a serious guy, but he likes to joke around a lot. But this time he was very serious. And he said to me, son, he goes, you also have to remember, this is the business of killing. This is what war is. War on the level that you're on the ground, with other soldiers, men and women, all doing the same thing. This is the business of killing. When you're like a general and all these other guys, they're in the business of bureaucracy, but you're in the business of killing. And you're going to be in very uncomfortable situations, and you only have one option, and you have to find yourself comfortable in uncomfortable situations and learn how to be okay with what you're doing, because if you don't kill them, they're going to kill you, and they're going to kill the people next to you. And you guys are all relying on each other. And if one of you fails, the others will fail as well. So you have to be very comfortable with this idea of what you're doing and make peace with it. And in my second tour, to this day, I don't ever forget those words. And on my second tour, my mindset was very different. And it was no longer about, well, am I fearful or regretful about what we're doing, taking lives and doing X, Y, or Z? No, I became the soldier I always knew I was supposed to be, because I knew what my father had told me was the truth. And I became comfortable with it. And I said, I'm not in a position to be a bureaucrat. I'm a soldier, and I have to be here and do my job, because if I don't do it, my fellow soldiers are going to die because of me. So I need to stay on my A game and always make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
And when did you ultimately get out?
After the ready reserve time, I mean, when we met, I was still in doing the reserve time, and I was reporting regularly to Fort Hamilton. But officially, I got out in 2015.
Gotcha. So by 2000, when were you finished seeing combat, though?
2011, I'd say, close to there.
2011. And where were you last?
Afghanistan.
So what ultimately happened over there? Because you're a disabled veteran, correct?
That's correct.
And what ultimately happened put you in that position? Like I said, we're very thankful to those who served and put your bodies on the line like that. And now you've spent, how the last so many years of your life helping other disabled veterans. So we appreciate that. But what ultimately happened?
Well, I mean, what do you mean happened as far as my injuries are concerned?
Right.
Well, I'm after almost 17 years of jumping out of planes, your back and your knees take quite a beating, and your brain gets rattled a bit. And but I mean, being a combat engineer, any other combat engineer can tell you this: explosives and also artillery personnel can very much, possibly more so, identify with the issues of impact concussions. When you're standing next to these howitzers or these explosives using C4 and you're very close in proximity, like when you're doing breaches, etc., that impact rattles your brain. It shakes you up, shakes your teeth, shakes your eyeballs and your brain, and eventually your brain starts to develop scar tissue because of it, because your body's not meant to take such an impact. Sure. Even if it's from, whatever is around you. So I've got, issues as far as neurological because of the impact concussions, jumping out of planes and, landing very hard. My knees and my back have taken a toll. In Balad, I got a piece of a bullet, not the full bullet, thank God. And man, whoever shot it was a good shot, but they missed me. So, my turn. I will see you again. But and I know it was a 7.62 that they shot at me, but a piece of the bullet ricocheted off the wall and it caught me in my hand, came out the other side of my hand on the top, and by the grace of God, I didn't initially feel it, and it didn't break any bones. And I'm sure you've seen soldiers. We usually wore gloves. And I felt that something hit my hand, but I didn't feel it initially. I just said maybe that's a rock or something, coming up, from the gunshots. And I'm pulling my trigger, I'm in fire, and I realize that my hand feels wet. I'm like, what the hell is in what's going on? And then I looked at my glove, and it didn't look red initially, it just looked wet. And I took my glove off, and that's when I saw the little spurt of blood come out. I'm like, oh my God, all right, this is happening right now.
Wow.
And I'm trying to figure out what happened, and called my medic. Medic looked at me, he goes, what the hell happened to you? I'm like, oh, well, I think I got shot in the hand. He's like, but I'm opening and closing my hand. He's like, well, you didn't break any bones. He goes, but how? How did you not break? I said, man, God was probably holding on to that bullet to make sure it didn't break my hand. Because I don't know. But then eventually, I think taking the glove off was a mistake because then the pressure started to set in. So I had to put my glove back on to try to hold that pressure in my hand. And I just stuffed it with gauze on both ends. The only thing my medic said, he goes, can you pull the trigger? Is the trigger thing? I'm like, I'm good. He goes, you're going to have to do this until we can at least, get this to be a little bit more calm. And then I can look at you because right now this is too much. So my hand was killing me. I mean, it wasn't hurting, but I can feel the swelling, but there was really no pain. I guess my adrenaline, that initial shock, didn't settle in. So I'm just returning fire, and with about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes later, it calmed down. And the medic looked at my hand again, but by now my glove is completely just drenched in blood. It's like my hand is swimming in my glove.
Wow.
And when I looked at the other side, he goes, man, I have no idea how this bullet didn't break any bones in your hand. That's incredible. And but it was a pretty big gash on the back side of my hand and a small hole by the palm of my hand. And the swelling, once that adrenaline went away and that swelling and the pain settled in, I was on a whole nother level of, I think I was saying swear words. I was probably inventing some. I was making some up. I was asking everybody, even invisible monsters, why this happened, because this was crazy.
Yeah.
But you know, the medics in the Army are very well trained. They took really good care of me. Within 2 days, my hand was fine. You know, it just stung a little bit, but it was back to normal. It wasn't swollen. Well, it wasn't back to normal. Obviously, I've just got a big chunk of meat coming out of my hand, but you know, it was well enough where I could be, you know, healed up, ready to rock and roll within about 4 days after it happened. But after 2 days, it was already kind of getting back to feeling okay. And at the 4th and 5th day, I was ready. I was going right back out there.
Yeah,
Wow. And it's like from one of the scenes out of a movie, right?
Yeah, right. That's intense.
I mean, I didn't feel like that initially. It felt like this is the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
Sure.
But you know, you think about it now, and it's like if you replay it in your head, it's like, wow, this of all the things to happen, this happened to me. Like, that's incredible. You know, you get guys that shoot themselves in the foot because they don't want to go in the Army, they don't want to do this, they don't want to go to war. Here, I get shot in the hand, and Captain says, "No, you're good. Go back out there. You know, take a salt pill, walk it off."
Wow.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about, you were talking about the jumps and jumping out of planes for all those years. Yeah, what is that like? Can you tell everybody a little bit about that? I know that you'd previously spoken a bit about halos and stuff. Why don't you tell everybody about the jumps?
Yeah, initially again, going back, I was the 92 Romeo as a parachute rigger. So, but you have to be airborne qualified before you go learn how to pack a parachute. So right out of basic training, the first place you go to is Fort Benning, Georgia, to airborne school. And when you go there, it's a 3-week course, and you see a lot of different people. And when I was there, it was amazing because we got to see Navy SEAL, they weren't Navy SEALs yet, but they were Navy personnel going through that BUDS program, and they were going through airborne school. We saw personnel from other countries, military. I was in the same barracks floor with 2 captains from the Egyptian army. I said, "This is insane." I said, "Wow, like when would I have ever gotten a chance to see these people?" And it was incredible. But then the black hats, those are the instructors at the airborne school. They get a hold of you. They don't listen. These guys don't care if you're a general or if you're a just starting out private. You're in their territory and they're in charge. You know, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be a 5-star general. You try to act like you're in charge, and they will remind you gladly that you are not, that you are in airborne school, and they are there to teach you how to be airborne. And, you know, everywhere you went, you had to you ran everywhere you went. You couldn't come in the barracks without doing 10 pull-ups. You can't leave the barracks without doing 10 pull-ups. You had to go into the chow hall a certain way. And where we were, when you go to Fort Benning in Georgia for airborne school, and anybody who's airborne listening will know what I'm talking about. There's a 1-mile track, and it's an asphalt track. And I hated that track. I liked it, but I hated it because you run literally every single day, everywhere you go, and they will run you into the ground. And airborne school is basically the first 2 weeks is not only training you how to land and how to put your feet and knees together and you go in the tower, but it's also they are doing what they can to get you out of there. They want to see that, you know, are you too weak to do this? Are you afraid of heights? And why are you here? Maybe you should go home. Maybe you should go back to your initial unit. You don't want to get out of here. They want you to quit. And but it was great. And then the last week is jump week, and you're doing it's 5 jumps. And the very first jump is always the scariest one because everybody goes out as an individual. You don't do mass exit. You've got to literally stand in the door and you're looking at the world whiz by, just flying by, just head above the trees at 800 feet. And as soon as it's your turn, you don't even look at the jump masters. You just stare outside the door. They will pat you on the, we had Kevlar helmets back then. I remember what the guys got now. But we had Kevlar helmets back then. You'd either tap you on the shoulder or on the helmet. It'd say go, and you just had to go. And I didn't have fear of jumping. I had fear of the repercussions had I not jumped.
Oh, wow.
That was the fear. The fear was if I don't jump out of this airplane, I'm going to be letting down not only my instructors, but also the people that I've been training with this entire course, the people that have been supporting me and I've been supporting them. If I don't do this, I'm letting more than just myself down. So it was always bigger than me. And I couldn't let that fear overtake me. So I just went with no hesitation and said, well, if I die, this is it. At least I'm doing something cool.
If he dies, he dies.
If he dies, he dies. That's it. And then Halo came afterwards. Halo came much later on because when you're in Fort Bragg, I think I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit. I did have the opportunity to go to Ranger School, and you know that, Mike.
Yeah.
And after Ranger School, I got sent right back to the 82nd in Fort Bragg, And of course, you get the whole, oh, you got a Ranger tab now. You must think you're high speed. Yeah, I am. You're not, So. And but once you become a Ranger, getting to schools or wanting to go to different schools can be slightly easier. And Halo School is very close to where we were. I wanted to do it. And seeing that I had already jumped so many times, static line jumps out of, C-130s and C-141s and C-5s. And we jumped from the old T-10 Charlie parachutes and the MC-1-1 parachutes. I said, well, the only difference is that we're going to be much higher and we don't have a static line. And we always knew the higher we were, the safer we were, because the higher in altitude you are, the more time you have to adjust, if you ever have some sort of a malfunction. So it was never a matter of fear. It doesn't make a difference. It's like walking on a balance beam, whether you're 10 inches off the ground or 10 feet off the ground, the balance beam's still the same. But the higher you are, you may be able to do a little flip and land on your feet. It's different. So I go to Halo School, did that, and it was rough, but I passed it. And
what does that stand for?
High altitude, low opening. So essentially, planes will fly at a very high altitude. I think the highest that we were at was just at 21,000 feet. And you go up there with your oxygen mask, and you have a little tank of oxygen behind your helmet. You got the goggles on. You've got your equipment, and you're at 21,000 feet. And the first initial jump's no equipment. It's just you and the parachute and whatever other equipment you have, but it's not a combat jump. And
what would be the purpose of something like that? If you got to get in quietly, you don't want.
Very quietly. Think about it. If the plane is flying at 21,000 feet, and depending on what plane you have, if you have a jet plane, say like a C-141, you can hear that plane. But if you're in a prop plane like a C-130 Hercules and you're at 20,000 feet, you're not going to hear it as much. And if you're releasing soldiers at 21,000 feet on a prop plane like a C-130 that you can barely hear as opposed to a jet, and you get a good amount of soldiers in there, when it's a Halo jump, you're going to get at most, and this is pushing it, maybe 8 to 10 people at a time. That's pushing it with personnel. And so they don't even know you're coming down, and you leave that plane, you jump at that plane, you open your parachute at 3,500 feet. You have an altimeter attached to your left hand, and you're always adjusting and always looking at your altitude as you're descending. And at 3,500 feet, you open your parachute also because the higher you are, the less likely you'll be seen. And then you can make your way into a stealth position, whether it be behind enemy lines or to a specific location.
So you fall for thousands and thousands of feet before you open
you're
it
just
up.
coming down, and you hear that wind just whipping by your face, and it's the greatest feeling ever. I used to tell people, I said, if you're ever addicted to drugs, I said, forget rehab. Just come with me and let's jump out of a plane. And your adrenaline high will be so great, you won't even look back to drugs anymore. You'd want to do this forever.
Wow. So if any of our listeners are struggling with addiction, Dom's signing you up for a plane ride. Can we see if we get your camera back? Could we give that a shot? Could you click that camera?
I'm trying over here. I don't know what's going on. I think I don't even know if I unplug this, I might lose you guys.
Okay, all right. Then,
don't worry.
We won't mess with it. We'll get it figured out. Hopefully there will be a next time. We do have a question for you. Before we
Yes.
do that, for those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. We've got a question from Scott. It says, well, first he said only 800 feet, and Jeremy, who's also a veteran, said, Scotty, 800 feet or 20,000 feet, 3,000 feet. And I'm thinking, what did he say? Oh, well, you guys are commenting too fast. It's 800 feet or 20,000 feet. It doesn't matter. Military parachutes only control the fall. It's not like civilian parachuting.
Right. Well, I'm looking at the question here. I want to make one thing clear. When it's the old, because when I was still jumping, the last parachute I jumped out of was the MC-1-1 Charlie. But we also trained with the T-10 Charlie. These are old parachutes, so people who are listening know exactly. I'm an old fart. I'm an old guy from a different era of the Army.
Well, most people hear you say, what did you say, MC? What did you say? Call it?
MC-1-1 Charlie. That was still
MC-1-1 Charlie. Oh yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, it was an older parachute.
It wasn't the Alpha Bravo Zulu.
Hey,
yeah, it was one of
99%
those
of people
old,
have no idea what you're talking about.
No, it was one of the older parachutes. It was round. It was not like the ones they have now that are square. These were
Why
still
don't they give you
round.
the square ones? I never understood that.
The square ones are
like the
made-
Walkman of parachutes? Is that what that is?
Right,
The
exactly.
Walkman of
No,
parachutes?
these square ones are, I'm telling you, these square ones are out of sight. They're so good, and I wish I had jumped out of those a lot more. But
out of sight just shows that.
Was it
So you had an old parachute. You're using old man phrases. Out of sight.
Yeah.
Were there was parachutes the cat's pajamas as well?
Oh, they were the bee's knees.
They were the bee's knees.
They were far out.
Absolutely.
Need a bag of bees now.
Yeah, but whatchamacallit, when you jump out of a plane, most airborne operations, but this is more like exercises. You're jumping out of a C-130. They will only go about 800 feet. If maybe they feel like going to 1,000, they would. But the standard is about 800 feet with the old parachutes that we used to do. And remember, it's a static line parachute, so you don't have to control the opening of this parachute. The static line is doing it for you. You just have to get your feet and knees together, exit that plane like you're going to lay down on a couch, hold your reserve parachute on the ready. You count to 4. If you look up and your parachute isn't opened, it's cigarette rolled or whatever, you pull that reserve and you open it up. On a combat jump, you're going to be jumping out of 500 feet. So 800 feet was more for the training aspect of it, but in combat, with those parachutes, you jump out of 500 feet. Now with the new parachute systems that they have, I'm not sure if that's still the same protocol or not, but
Scott says right here, he said, I've jumped static line 5 times from 3,000 feet, but I'm thinking it took 400 feet to fully open the chute. That's why 800 feet sounds crazy. Mine is a 38-foot round military chute.
500 is crazy.
Well, 3,000 feet from static line, but was that with the new square parachutes? That's what I want to know.
He said his was a 38-foot round military chute.
I don't think so. From 3,000 feet?
Yeah, he says he jumped static line 5 times from 3,000 feet, but I'm thinking it took 400 to fully open the chute. That's why 800 feet sounds crazy.
But there are ram air parachutes that do open static line. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Oh,
Gotcha.
There are ram air is what Halo uses are ram air parachutes, and in Halo you jump and there is no static line. However, there are parachutes that are ram air capable that do open with the static line, and that's what I'm trying to find out from him.
Gotcha. I'm just relaying the comments here. I know nothing about parachutes. People are
Come on, Mike, let's get you up in a plane.
Got to get Mike to do a jump.
Yeah, once Tim Kennedy
That'd be a fun
you'll
video.
call him, he'll
Let's do it.
Leave it in the comments if you want to see me jump out of a plane on a parachute. Make Mike G in the morning video, right? You saw me go to the carnival with Russ and break bottles, and
That's right.
Maybe we'll get a video together jumping out of a plane. That sounds like fun. That'll be our next video, right, Dom? Or can you jump out of planes anymore?
Listen, I'll still do it. I don't care. If one of my knees breaks, I got another one.
That's the attitude.
Now, Scott, the same gentleman who was making the comment, he says, what was your worst or scariest jump?
My jump?
Yes.
So the scariest jump.
Not my jump, of course your jump.
The scariest jump was twofold. It was the first night jump during airborne school in Fort Benning. The night jump was always the scariest. We only do it once during airborne school, but the first night jump I ever did was scary because it's at night, it's pitch black. Inside the plane, you have the red light bulbs, so it's kind of creepy. And then you see the jump masters, they're looking out the doors, and all you can think of is like, what the heck are they looking for? You can't even see your hand in front of your face. It's so dark out.
Wow.
And then you have to set up everything while the same thing, the whole routine while you're inside the plane, your movements are always the same. Stand up, hook up, shuffle to the door. And so you know everything, you know what's going on. The red lights inside the plane make it very creepy. But it was scary because you're like, okay, now I've jumped. Now my parachute is open, but you can't see the ground. You can't see anything. You can literally see just a void of nothing. And it's scary because it's like, where the hell do I go? Like, which way am I pulling my risers to direct myself? I could land in a tree for all I know, and I have no control over where I'm going. And it's scary. So now to that same effect, the second scariest jump I had was, of course, in Halo. When I jumped in Halo school, they make you do a night jump. This particular jump was at around, I want to say 15,000 feet. But again, it's at night. You're very high up in the air, and you're above clouds, and you see the clouds underneath you.
Right.
And the moon, it's like a movie. And you jump, and it's like, well, I can't see where we are, but, I guess we're going to go through some clouds. And the first time I went through a cloud, I remember the first thought I had was, oh man, these are actually really wet and dense. I didn't think that this was going to be like this. I'm kind of like jumping through mist. It was very wet going through the cloud. And I wanted to tell people what happened to me, but I don't know if I can say it on the air, or it's kind of graphic a little bit. But the first time I jumped, I had my accident.
Oh, no, you can say that. You can
say that. Well, of course.
Hey, you got to tell us.
You can use words that we can use on the air, right?
I peed myself.
Hey,
I peed myself because I was scared.
Urinated, right?
I urinated on myself. Shout out to Ali if you're listening.
Yeah, we used to
urinated on
fight with this
myself.
guy who we always used to. I don't know if it was a translation thing. English was his second language. He spoke Hindi. He's from India, and he would only use the word urinated.
Oh my God! And
as a matter of fact, I think he was getting ready for a fight, and in the weeks
we were in
up to it,
Philly.
he's like, I'm going to. You
we
could do
were
the
in
voice
Philly.
now.
Yeah, we were in Philly.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah,
and but we were
Yeah,
so.
he said, I'm going to urinate on this guy.
Oh, it was funny. I remember that. I remember that like it was yesterday.
I'm
But,
sorry.
But because we're so high up, after having that accident, by the time I landed, it was already dry because all the wind had already, pretty much took care of it.
Wow.
And so I'm looking around going, all right, nobody notices it.
So you wet your pants on the way down. It's dry by the time you hit the ground.
Yes,
Just
nobody
blame it on the
noticed
cloud.
So I was okay.
Were
But it's only
you
because
looking
again-
around, like
The
checking
silver
around, and
lining.
looking down, and see if you look like Billy Madison in that one scene?
Well, here's the thing, though. When you jumping Halo, one of the things they tell you it's very important is never look down. You always have to look at the horizon because you can get vertigo really easy.
Oh,
And
wow.
You feel that sensation that the land is coming at your face very, very fast.
Sure.
And that can make you pass out. If you pass out, then you have problems. But we had other pieces of equipment with us to make sure that if we did pass out and we did not open our parachute in time, this device would open it for us. But we disengaged it the moment we opened our own parachute. So it was. But if you look down and you see that land, it'll come at your face at 100 miles an hour, and you'll pass out from the sheer sight of it. That's why they tell you keep your eyes on the horizon.
You know anybody who died jumping out of planes, whether it was in training or in combat?
Yes.
What's that like? Seeing somebody you know doing the same thing that you're doing, and they don't make it.
It's a horrible feeling because the first thought is, like, you ask, what happened? Like, was the equipment malfunctioning? Was the parachute not packed correctly? And then the second thing you start to think of is like, well, this could have easily have been me. And then the third thing you start to, think about it, it's like, well, man, I know this guy's wife and I know his family. And then the sadness and the depression of the situation starts to settle in, because now you're looking around at your buddies going, who's going to tell his wife? Who's going to something? Who's going to help her out, or what's going to happen? These things, they don't happen regularly, but they happen more often than people would care to admit. And it's funny, I'm going to tell you a secret that many people don't know. And if anybody is listening that's stationed in Fort Bragg, you know what I'm talking about. There's a marquee right in the vicinity of the 82nd Airborne. I actually don't know if it's still there, but there used to be when I was there. And it would count the days, 82 days. And if there was no accidents or deaths within the 82nd Airborne, after 82 days, you'd get a day off. Marquee every day would count down, 2 days with no accidents or deaths, 10 days. And you'd get to that 80 days, and all of a sudden you'd drive past it the next day and it's back down 0 days. And I'm like, oh man, somebody got hurt or somebody died. And your first question is, I wonder if I knew him. Who was he? What unit was he in? Where, what happened? And people would look at this marquee all the time because you wanted it to get to those 82 days so you can get a day off. It was a nice little incentive, but it was an incentive that we had no control over, whether or not somebody had an accident or not. It's just, we just hope that nobody did. It's still there. But I know that anybody who was at Fort Bragg at the time, or it may still be there, because Fort Bragg is closed up now. Access is not as easy as it used to be. So I'm not sure if that marquee is still there. But a lot of people, if you have any listeners that were ever stationed at Fort Bragg, I'm sure they all know what I'm talking about, especially if they were in the 82nd.
How many times did you have to pull your reserve, Dom?
Never. Thank God.
Oh, you never did, really? Okay, wow.
Jeremy says, my parents were in the Army during Vietnam. My dad had someone land 15 yards away from him on the tarmac whose chute didn't open, and he didn't open a reserve. Man, rough stuff. Jeremy also said, I'd like to see Mike do a tandem with Dom. Just remember, Mike, you'll be the little spoon. So a little all over the place in the comments there. Very serious.
I'll pay to see that one.
I'm sure you would.
We can get a sponsor for that one, I think. Yeah.
That would be great. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So, Dom, I want to get into what was it like trying to transition back into civilian life when you've been over there and you've been involved in combat and you've had to fight for your life and you see things that most people can't even imagine. And now you're back on Staten Island, back in Staten Island, New York, trying to lead a regular life and work a regular job. What was that like, making that adjustment?
It was very difficult because one of the things that when I initially was getting out, the programs for transition weren't as put together as they should have been. I believe they are now, but back then they weren't as well put together. So when I got out, it was just a matter of going through the different stations and just, turning in your equipment and making sure you were accountable for all your equipment. And if you were missing something, you had to pay for it. It was that silly, even if it was a canteen or something minor. You had to go to medical and make sure that all your medicals were okay. You were tip-top magoo. And after that, you go to a couple more places, and then you get your little stamps at every station, and then your final stamp, especially for those who know about Fort Bragg, you get your little dragon stamp from the 18th Airborne Corps, and then you're basically done. But transitioning was very difficult because, you get all these people that say, oh, you were in the military, anybody's going to hire you. I'm going to tell you right now, anybody listening, that's an outright lie. One of the things I encountered was I tried to do many different jobs, meaning I tried to apply to many different places, and people didn't want to hire me. And it was a hiring manager in Manhattan that was very honest with me. I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to get him in trouble, but he was very honest with me. He he asked me, how many places have you applied to? I says, I've been all over the city. He says, listen, the truth of the matter is people like veterans, but they don't want to hire you because you're too fresh out. You're very, very fresh out, and they don't know what your mindset is. What do you mean? They're like, well, they don't know if you're gonna go crazy and start, getting angry at people. They don't know who you are. They don't know, like, this guy just got out of a war, and now we're gonna have him in this office. We don't know what he's gonna do. So that fear of a lot of people within their businesses was very prevalent, and it was difficult to get things moving as far as jobs. So then my last resort was by my mother's house right there in Great Kills in Staten Island. I said, well, I've got to do something. And I went to go work at a grocery store, and they were very clear on saying, we'll give you a job, but go in the back and work in the, in the back room, and you'll unload the trucks and do this. And it's almost trying to keep me away from people and doing what they could to keep me out of the general population in the front and not deal with customers. Meanwhile, in my brain, I'm going, I'm fine, guys. Like, I'm not going to spaz out and, but they didn't know that. And I think
the more they treat you like that, it's almost the more frustrated you can get with them.
And I was becoming very frustrated.
Yeah.
I was becoming very frustrated because it's not what I want. I don't want to. I'm not Quasimodo. You don't have to hire me back, And I'm not one of these crazy people. But they didn't know that at the time. And and to their defense, I can understand how they felt. I really do. I'm not going to say that they're bad people for doing it. You have to think of it and put yourself in their shoes and see it from their perspective. To protect their business and their well-being, they've got to understand, well, let's put him in this position, let's get to know him a little bit more, and then we'll see where we're at. And then once we understand, like, all right, he's normal, he's not going to do anything, then they'll bring him out and we'll treat him a little bit different.
So I can understand. At that point?
What's that?
Did you have a degree at that point?
No, I did not. Okay. I got the degree thanks to your mom, but that's further into the conversation.
Okay.
But working in this grocery store is where I got the infamous, which is the worst job in history.
The worst there is, the worst there was, the worst there ever will
be. I'm not going to mention the company's name. I'm not going to do that. But very well, I worked for them for a while, and it was, don't mention the name. You don't want to lose sponsors or be in any trouble.
No. I won't mention the name, but you could describe what you did with the job.
Wait, what's the name?
Basically, I put cookies on shelves, so that kind of narrows it down.
Okay.
And I serviced different stores in different territories. And it was okay. I started off part-time. The guy that got me the job, I liked him, and I worked with him part-time. Then I got the full-time position with the company car and all that, and I took Mike with me to a few little adventures. And he told me I think we were going to a Yankees game, right?
Right.
And he said to me, clear as day, I can remember it. He said, Dom, this is the absolute worst job on the planet.
I said, how long you been doing this? I think he was like 3 years. Yeah. I would have jumped off a bridge 2 years and 364 days ago.
It was horrible, but
yeah.
Thankfully I was able
to wake up at the crack of dawn and then all day you're on your hands and knees.
Some of the worst neighborhoods.
In some of the worst neighborhoods in New York and New Jersey. I think I took you to the one store where the guy, the security guard, had a gun by the produce. It was like, the produce serious. It's like, you shoot somebody, steal them the cantaloupes. Like,
don't get near the mangoes. They take their mangoes seriously here.
That way, some of those places are absolutely outrageous, and not to mention that everybody thought you worked at the store, so you get people coming over to you constantly, being like, "Do you know what aisle the jelly's in?"
Right.
And you're like, "Do I look like I work here? I gotta."
You know where the crackers are, man. You're in the aisle where the crackers are, right? They're right here in front of you. If you looked around, maybe you'd see.
And so,
I've seen those guys at Wawa, I think.
Yeah, well, they'll be in assortment stores, and from knowing Dom, I'll walk through the store and you'll see somebody there, and somebody's coming over to them and asking them a question.
Right.
Just, shut up, get out of here. He's a distributor. He doesn't work here. He doesn't know anything about this
Leave
store.
alone. See his shirt? It doesn't say Wawa.
Yeah, right. Go find somebody with a shirt store. But how is it you dealing with little nitpicky things like that? It almost reminds you of that scene from The Wrestler where Mickey Rourke's behind the counter and he's dealing with all the people who are coming up to the counter, all the customers, and they're all driving him nuts, and he just goes nuts at some point. You remember that?
Well, yeah, of course. How could I? Dude, listen, Mickey Rourke movies, you know just as well as I do. They're some of my. I know they're some of your favorites because they're some of my favorites, and we've sat and watched them together quite a few times. But think about it, in that scene in The Wrestler where he's in the back behind the meat counter, and he's staring at that meat grinder. He's like, and he just jams his finger into it. You think about that. Think about it, and then think about a soldier coming out of the military. If a veteran that is fresh out and is kind of, lost, so to speak, if they could just shove their hand in a meat grinder just so they can get back to being a soldier, I think a lot of them would do that. For as many of them that would deny it, I would challenge them to see me in another week or so and then tell me if you feel the same way. Because initially, veterans are like, yeah, I'm out. I'm all excited. I'm going to do all these things. A month later, they're like, man, I wish I could get back in. I wish I could go to my old unit. I wish I could be in the military again, because you are trained in such a way where this is what you breathe. This is the air you breathe. Being a military is the food you eat. It's how you breathe. It's how you walk. It's how you address people. It's how you answer the phone. It's in everything you do in everyday life. And think of living like that, but where all the regimented sense is taken away from you. And transitioning now to something that is even remotely close to it will never even equate to what it was. So it's difficult. So if veterans in some way, shape, or form, not the older ones, but the ones that are more fresh out, I would say within the first 2 months, if they could shove their hand in that meat grinder like you did in The Wrestler, just so they can get back to what they were supposed to be doing and get back to where they belong, that's what they would do. Because he didn't belong there. Randy the Ram belonged in the wrestling ring, not grinding meat. Those soldiers always think with that soldier mentality, I don't belong in a supermarket. I belong back in the Army. That's how I thought, too.
Jeremy says, I'd love to go back. I tried years ago, but I was told I wouldn't have a wife anymore if I did.
Maybe that's another part of it. You go in, but it's bigger than you now. You have a family or you have other obligations, and people can't just go back in willy-nilly.
Right. Speaking of Randy the Ram, I want to talk about a different part of your life.
Here we go. I knew this was going to come up.
Yeah, of course we got to talk about this. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So at some point, in the middle of all this, you got this, life story that belongs in a made-for-TV movie or something. And somewhere in the middle of that, you and your brother are the tag team professional wrestling champions of Puerto Rico. Is that true?
It's funny because people listening probably don't even believe half of this, but it's good.
Right.
but it's good that at least I've known you for 15 years, and I've got all the picture evidence and video evidence to prove everything I've said to you. So for any of the listeners, if you doubt me, you ask Mike Jeremita, and he'll tell you that I'm 100% legit. I'm not making this stuff up. But yes, for a while, in between tours, this is was a lot before a lot of things, and in between stations, and in between going back and forth, I would go back to Puerto Rico, and my brother was very involved in professional wrestling, so he got me into it. And at first I was like, man, like, come on, like, I don't want to, this is ridiculous, and I saw him, but he's my older brother, so it's like, all right, I'll go with him to where he was training. And of course, I mean, this is, I guess, listen, being tall is all fine and dandy, but when you're in a country and you're pretty much taller than most of everybody else, and you walk into a wrestling gym, they see like, whoa, look at this huge guy, like, hey, you want to be a wrestler? And I'm like, no, but I'm just here with my brother. They're like, oh, why don't you just move around with us a little bit? And I moved around. I learned how to do it. And eventually my brother just kept nipping at my ear and said, let's just do it. And I said, all right, whatever. And I got so into it because my brother and I would watch all these Japanese wrestling movies and try to learn different things. I ended up painting my face and blowing fire out of my mouth and all kinds of stuff. I was like, if I'm going to be a wrestler, I'm doing backflips. I'm doing whatever I got to do to be the show. I'm going to do it. And it was interesting. And we were wrestling at the time when I guess the ECW was like really hot. So the hardcore essence of wrestling was something that people really gravitated to. So I said,
this is a Philadelphia station. You know how big ECW with Paul Heyman and everybody was in Philadelphia. I mean, this is the birthplace, right?
Absolutely. So at the time, speaking of ECW, while I was wrestling, the biggest names in Philly, there were Rob Van Dam, there were Sabu, there were Taz, there were all these Mike Awesome, there were all these guys out of ECW. So you said to yourself, if I'm going to be a wrestler and I'm going to be at the level that I need to be to garner the attention that I think I should be getting, I need to be doing what the guys that are getting the attention are doing, like a Rob Van Dam, like a Sabu, like a Taz, etc. But I was in Puerto Rico the equivalent of what Mike Awesome would be, because Mike Awesome was this big 6'8" imposing guy. And in Puerto Rico, I'm 6'2", but to them, I might as well have been 7 feet tall. So, here I am, this big guy. I'm wrestling in Puerto Rico. I'm blowing fire out of my mouth. So it's like, wow, have you seen this guy? And the part of me is like, I wish I hadn't done that because I couldn't do it forever since I had to go back in the army. So there'd be a long time in between times where I could come and wrestle.
Can you teach us how to blow fire out of our mouths?
I will not do that because then you'll go play with fire and I'll be.
I want to do that on the air sometime.
Mike, I think Mike, you saw me do it once or twice, right?
Right, yeah, but we gotta see if we can get a hold of those photos. That would be fun to put those up on the screen. Maybe we'll post them out.
Well, I would, if my camera would work, I could actually show you, but I sincerely still don't know what's going on with this thing.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. There will be other times that now with the audience has got a little taste, they're going to want more, and we're going to have to go into further detail about some of these stories. But you really did love being involved in professional wrestling when you were?
I loved it because and I was always the bad guy in wrestling. Being the bad guy is where the fun is at because for several reasons. The bad guy, people who don't know professional wrestling as far as the inside story of it, the bad guy runs the show. The bad guy is going to run the match. I'm pretty much telling the other guy what we're doing, how we're going to do this, and my job is to make him or her look good. We're going to make each other look good, but as the bad guy, I have to get the people to really hate me, and I have to make the good guy, in essence, the baby face. I got to make them look really good. So it wasn't a matter of winning or losing, as long as people knew that if you came to see me, you're going to see a show. You're going to see things happening. Go watch ECW, then you come watch me wrestle, and you're gonna really enjoy the show. You're gonna not regret coming to see us because that was the goal. And as the bad guy, I got people hating me I got old ladies throwing food at me and soda. I hit somebody with a chair, and this old lady threw her entire dish at me. And she's yelling. I was like, how dare you do that? And said, old lady, what the hell are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be home watching a soap opera? That lady almost jumped the guardrail and beat the crap out of me. I said, I got to get out of here. And then when I got to the dressing room, everybody was like, hey, man, that old lady's going to get you. I'm afraid of her. I'm not going to back you up. And I said, oh, man, you see that? And she almost really got me. It's like, I think she's still waiting for you. She still might get you.
They don't mess around in Puerto Rico.
Right.
No, man. Those fans in Puerto Rico, they're rough. They'll get you. You say the wrong.
What's the weapon of choice? I know if it was an Italian lady, she'd have a wooden spoon waiting. What's the weapon of choice for old Puerto Rican ladies?
Oh, she's got a knife somewhere and maybe her bra somewhere. There's a blade somewhere in there. She's got it. She'll cut you.
That is funny. For those of us just tuning in.
Good, and that's it. She'll cut you. What'd you say?
Yeah. No. I was just pausing for station identification. Something we do here in the biz. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. When you said that you walked in and they thought you were huge and wanted you to stay, obviously big draw for professional wrestling because of that size and that presence, particularly in that area, reminds me of a story when you were in the parking lot in Staten Island and this smaller gentleman was selling puppies in the parking lot. Do you remember that?
Oh, I vaguely do.
He was
Wow.
a really small guy selling puppies. I think it was like Christmas Eve or something like that, because you're
Oh my God.
together
Yeah.
later that evening and you're over there with your younger brother, and the man's selling puppies out of the parking lot. Like, puppies, puppies, puppies. And you go over and he said, can I see one of the puppies? And he looks all the way up at you because he's a smaller guy. And he says, you don't need a puppy. You need a horse. And I think he said something along the lines of, shut up and give me that dog. And then he started kissing it like,
Yeah. I said, shut up and give me the dog, stupid. Why you're out here selling it if you don't want to sell me a dog? He says, just don't eat it. And I'm like, oh.
Another twist and turn to the story. I got to throw another interesting wrinkle in there. I was looking at one of the photo albums of your professional wrestling days.
Yeah.
And as I'm flipping through this photo album, I see something and I have no idea why it's in there. And then realize it's this newspaper clipping for this Shakespearean play.
You're really going to go here. Too, huh? Wow.
This newspaper clipping for a Shakespearean play.
So, okay. So that's.
And I start with that.
I'm good though. There's an interesting story to that. But
okay, well, let me just I'll give it away to everybody. I'll set the background, and then you can tell how it all came about. But I'm looking through this album, this newspaper clipping for Shakespearean. There's a Shakespearean play, and I'm like, why is this in here? And then I'm looking through these characters who are in the newspaper ad, and one of them is Dominic Leon, standing there in full Shakespearean tights, the star of a Shakespearean play. Tell us what that was all about.
Well, all right. So the weird part is that play was actually right before 9/11.
Oh.
9/11 hadn't happened yet, and I'm in Puerto Rico, and a friend of mine was friends with this producer who put on these kind of plays. Like all kinds of plays, children's plays, Shakespearean plays, adult-only plays. And he had this particular play, yes, it was in the newspaper advertised, but this was an adult-only play. And so this character that I played had a monologue in the very beginning of the play for about 2 minutes. The problem was that the character had to act like he was coming out of a river completely naked and speaking out loud to himself as he's coming out. Now, the people he had previously were all nervous and they didn't want to do it, so they backed out. My friend Vanessa knows the producer, and she knows the problem, and she just quickly says, oh, well, my friend Dominic will do it.
This is volunteer. I think I volunteered Billy Crisp or something like that.
We'll talk about that next week.
I saw her that night, and she says, oh, by the way, I need you to come with me tomorrow to this producer's house because they just said you would do this. And I said, do what? She says, oh, well, you're going to do a play. I'm going, Vanessa, I can't do a play. What are you, out of your mind? And she says, no, I think you could do it. You'd be good for the part. And I said, all right. I get there, the guy explains to the part to me, and I say to him, listen, I don't care about the naked part. I'll get naked at the drop of a hat. That's not the problem. The problem is that I'm gonna forget my lines. There's no way I'm gonna remember these lines.
Oh, that was the problem.
That was the problem. And he looked at me and he said pretty much the same. He goes, yeah, I don't believe you. So the first couple.
When did Joe Biden become our guest?
Oh my God. Yeah, I didn't have an earpiece, a little notes in my hand, a little cheat sheet to help me out.
Great, yeah.
So I go to his house. I go for these the rehearsals for the play, and they're telling me, they're like, nobody believes you're gonna do this because the other guys backed out because you got to be naked. I was like, okay. I said, no problem. when I went to the rehearsal, I went to the bathroom, took all my clothes off, walked into the rehearsal completely naked, and they got quiet. I said, guys, come on, lines, let's go. I got to learn this stuff.
Chop, I ain't got time.
They said, why are you
For
naked?
rehearsal,
I
you
said,
didn't have to be naked, you know.
yeah, I said, yeah. I said, well, why? I said, why? They said to me,
It's a
Dominic,
dress rehearsal, not an
Right.
undress
It's a dress
rehearsal.
rehearsal.
they said, Dominic, why are you naked? I said, well, you guys don't believe I'll do it. So I got to learn my lines. If I can learn my lines naked, then you'll believe I'll do it.
Right.
And even then the producer's like, I don't believe it until you actually go on stage and you do this. And I said, oh, okay, all righty. So we did it, and I got to the actual first day that we were doing the play. And then finally, when I was on stage doing it, he believed it. And, he believed in me. But it was nerve-wracking because as I'm doing my monologue, I could hear the people in the audience talking. And I had to do my best to stay professional. And it was taking me back to my pro wrestling days, like stay in character.
Right.
Because you can hear them mumbling and saying these little very inappropriate things.
Like, who's that naked guy blowing fire at everybody?
Well, they weren't saying that. They were like, "Oh, I can see is this," and look at
that wrestler.
We gotta draw a line at some point, I guess.
Yeah. So, but after that, it was fine. And then I talked to Vanessa once the play was over, and I said, "Don't ever volunteer me for stuff like this again."
Really? That's all it took.
But
You get one time to volunteer me to give a monologue naked. And that's it. Never again.
Never again. But I ended up doing a lot more plays with that guy in that company. We did a lot of children's plays, other adult stuff too, but nothing else naked. That was just like production.
Oh, what a relief.
That's hilarious. Oh my God.
But funny enough, that particular scene, that particular play always followed me around because whenever I would do another play, they'd say, "Oh, you're that guy that got naked. You were the." I'm
You're
like,
known as the naked guy, right?
that guy from that poster, right? Oh,
you do all these years in your life just to be known as the naked guy.
The naked guy.
Naked guy. That's it.
So ultimately, you end up doing a lot of work with veterans after you're no longer with the distribution job. We're jumping back to civilian life, and you're doing this work with veterans. You're helping veterans out, and you end up back in school, right?
That's right. Now we get back to where your mom kind of comes into play because your mother saw that I was kind of bouncing around trying to figure out what to do. And she was the one who said, "Why don't you just go back to school?" And I said, "Okay, I think I can do that now. Now I'm old enough and a little bit more mature. I can handle school life, and at least I know I'll have a support system behind me." So, and then the College of Staten Island, thankfully, there was a very strong support system for veterans. Shout out to Loris Casafavo. She was a very, very instrumental person in being a support for me while I was in the College of Staten Island, along with your mom.
Yeah, don't mention my mom. We'll get her fired, right? any educational institution associated with conservative talk radio in any way.
Yeah, no.
They get the boot right out the door.
Yeah.
You know that naked guy.
Hey, I heard from that naked guy.
Naked they can tolerate. Conservative, that's not so
Yeah,
much.
that's a lot worse.
I heard from that naked guy on the radio that you told him to go to school. Like,
Hey. They had that person sent to like the. Yeah.
So So your mother was very instrumental in kind of guiding me, and I remember many days she'd stay up with me till like 3 a.m. looking at different things to do, and kind of helping me along with what classes I needed to pick and what the plan of attack, so to speak, was going to be. And I followed suit with her, and then she really kind of guided me in that direction and gave me more support that I possibly didn't have outside of the school system. And if it wasn't for her and being so, very supportive, I don't think I could have followed through with a lot of it, because it was very difficult, being a mature veteran, sitting in a classroom full of, essentially their children. Right. And the worst part of it is you got these, it's like now you see it, you got these 18, 19-year-old kids, and they think they know everything about the world, and you just want to turn them upside down like an ostrich and stick their heads in the dirt. And you don't come out of there until you learn better.
That always drove me nuts when you meet these kids who think that they know a lot about life just because they go to college.
I remember
those kinds of people.
I remember when I came to visit you at school, and that was always your complaint, going, these kids think they know everything about life, and they just got here yesterday.
Yeah, right.
It's like,
A lot of them claim to be socialists, right?
Oh, listen, just because you paint your hair purple and you eat cake on Wednesdays doesn't make you anything but a person with purple hair and cake on your face. You know anything about anything. It's it. Just because you bought cake at a discount store, it just makes you smart. Doesn't make you really, it doesn't make you a socialist or an intellectual. It just means you know where to shop.
Right.
Were a lot of these professors pushing leftist, ideologies on the students? I'm sure a lot of them were impressionable and would eat it all up. But were there a lot of the professors pushing this out there?
Yes, and oddly enough, there was and there wasn't. There was, believe it or not, the College of Staten Island, and I'll say their name. What are they going to do? Take my degree away? Too late.
Nowadays, they might.
It's a very liberal, kind of progressive school. So that thought is prevalent all around the school. It's very abundant. However, the professors, for the most part, that I took classes with, and a lot of them that I saw, were very neutral as far as they just stuck to teaching the class, and they kept politics out of it until something would come up, and then they would put their 2 cents in. But, sadly for them, when they decided to put their 2 cents in, Dominic just happened to be in the classroom, and I was never that quiet veteran in the back. I was always that challenging veteran in the middle of the class saying, you are absolutely wrong, and you have no idea nor a right to talk about what you're talking about. Stick to the class because you're making a fool of yourself. Just stick to the subject at hand. And they hated me for it because they always thought I was challenging. Like, oh, you keep challenging the professors. I said, well, I'm paying you, right? So now you listen.
Right.
It's not making sense. And these are children you're talking to, and they have no idea what you're talking about.
They work for you.
I used to do this veteran Q&A, like a veterans panel. We used to do this at the College of Staten Island. With a few veterans and myself. We would sit in the theater, in the main theater, and we'd be on stage, and we'd do a Q&A with the student body, and we allowed them. I made it very clear. Some professors like, well, don't ask him this, don't ask him that. I said, no, I want them to ask me whatever they want to ask me, whether it's an inappropriate or appropriate. It's up for me to decide, not somebody else. Don't think for me. Being offended is a me thing. It's not for you to be offended on my behalf thing. So let them ask what they're going to ask me, and I'll give them an answer. They're asking for a reason, and I never worried about whether they were going to ask, the quote unquote stupid question like, did you kill anybody or did you do this? Because they always do that. But if you take that opportunity if you take the opportunity away from somebody to ask you a question, even if it's a stupid question, then you are going to silence their voice for future things, and they're going to be afraid to ask further questions because of fear of being inappropriate or offensive. And I never wanted to do that with anybody. I was always an advocate of, you speak your mind. If somebody gets offended, that's their problem. You say what you got to say. Being offended is an individual's problem, not a group problem, but an individual problem. So you ask the question. There is no such thing as a stupid question other than, hey, does anything exist like a stupid question? That's a stupid question. But you ask your question because you're asking because you don't know.
That's great.
The only way you're going to ever know is if you ask. Closed mouths don't get fed. So open up your mouth, speak up, ask the questions, and find out.
So do you think that that's a problem with society today, is that you've got a lot of people who don't want that open dialogue, and they don't want certain questions to be asked, and well,
they want to. The whole thing about being offended and repressing somebody's voice is because, for some reason, our society has developed into this. It's like this idea where I'm going to get offended on your behalf because it bothers me.
Sure.
And I don't see how people ever could have the right to do that, because you don't know me. You're not in my shoes. Don't be offended on my behalf.
Sure.
If they're directing a question at me, it's my job, and it's within my own self to figure out whether their question or their attitude towards me bothers me or not. You know, it's not for somebody else to do it for me. If you are offended on my behalf, you are essentially saying that I'm too stupid to stand up for myself.
Right. I mean, that's the way I.
Essentially, if you feel the need that you're going to say, well, I'm offended on Dominic's behalf because you shouldn't say that to him, that's offensive. I said, well, you must think I'm really stupid. You're not even giving me the opportunity to be offended. I don't even have the right to be offended for myself.
Right.
Because now that would offend somebody else. Like, I'm offended that you wouldn't allow me to be offended.
You're stupid and limpy, right?
Yeah, so it's like, well, you're stupid and lippy and you just need to stay away. But that's the problem. We are in a society now where silencing other people on behalf of yourselves, or because you think that, listen, Democrats, these liberals like to talk about privilege. Who is more privileged than being offended or bothered on somebody else's behalf?
Right.
Good point.
Are you kidding me? You say, well, I'm offended.
Time on your hands, don't you?
You know, yes, like you must really have nothing better to do with your life than to think about things that you can complain about. Listen, if the soup is cold, go to another restaurant, but get out of my face. You know, and if this other gentleman's soup is cold, let him tell me. It's not your business and whether his soup is cold. It's not your job.
Maybe he likes cold soup.
Yeah,
maybe he likes cold soup. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he's that hungry. But unless you know, mind your business. But that's the problem. Now everybody wants to be offended. And the secondary problem to that is it's not just the privilege and the audacity of being offended on other people's behalves, but now we live in a society where people are so afraid to be ostracized or to be thought of as not part of the group that they remain silent and are just happy with following the ideology of a group, even if they don't believe in it. But they do this out of fear of being ostracized or having their friends saying, oh, well, we don't like you anymore, so you're not part of the group, because they fear that their friends, quote unquote, are going to kick them out of their group of friends, that they say, let me just keep my mouth shut and go along with it, because I don't want to be that person that opens their mouths and then gets kicked out of the group. Because the people I was oppressing, or the people that I didn't like, or the people that I kept calling Nazis and pigs, they're the only other people that I'd have to go to for them to accept me. But after I called them all these names, threw rocks at them, and said all these insensitive things to them, how would I even expect them to accept me? Meanwhile, little do they know, we want them. Hey, come to the light. Come see the light. If you make a mistake, they kick you out. Great. Now you have an opportunity to see the truth. Let's take the blinders off your eyes. We won't deny you access. I don't care if you got purple or blue hair. I don't care if you're gay or straight. I don't care where you're coming from. I just want you to take the time and to stop following people like sheep. Be that one sheep that says, hey, there's a door, right? You guys are all jumping off this bridge, but there's a door right there. Go through the door and go seek the truth, you know, on your own, and do it on your own merit. Don't follow people. We will accept you, but you have to be willing to learn on your own time what the truth is all about, and don't follow people just because you're afraid.
That's one of the things that drives me nuts. The mainstream media and the people on the left want to make it seem like everybody who's got any right-leaning view whatsoever is a Nazi. And unless you agree with their agenda on the left and through the mainstream media and the Hollywood elites, then you're a Nazi yourself, and you're a hateful person. And, you know, there's no way possible that we could have these thoughts and ideas that oppose their narrative and their agenda without being so.
Everything they say is extremely hypocritical, and everything they do is extremely hypocritical. But I'm going to give you, here's the examples. Liberals are very vocal about their hatred that, you know, don't label me. I'm not this, or don't label me. But when you're in that environment, no one has more labels than them. They have a label for every single environment within their liberal society.
That's true.
Let's-
That is
let's-
true.
let's- So now, and many people, you know my background, Mike. So I'm not going to go into my background. But let's take the LGBTQ community. I'm not going to attack them at all. I love them. But they say don't label me. But within the gay community, with men, like say for example, you've got bears, you've got otters, you've got twinks, you've got queers. Then you've got lesbians, you got lipstick lesbians, you've got the bikes on dykes, then you have all these labels, then you've got leather guys, you've got all kinds of these labels. But if you label one of them or try to categorize one of them within those labels, you are the bad guy. And they don't like labels, but nobody has more labels than them. Then they go into the calling people Nazis.
Right.
But they want to take
seems like within every aspect of categorization that you could come up with,
Right.
there are all these subdivisions, and they want to push you into one of these categories for identification purposes.
Which makes no sense.
Yet the idea is supposed to be that everybody treats everybody the same and we're all equal, yet they're dividing everybody up like that. We've got a comment from SM Durso. Dom, thank you for your service and for sharing your insights.
It's
To the
my
vets in the
absolute
chat
pleasure.
here, thank you for your service as well. We've had a great time talking
My
with you,
absolute
Dom.
pleasure,
We really
everybody.
appreciate having you on and your insight about Afghanistan. Tell us you'll come back on the program again.
Oh, me? I'll be on whenever you want me to.
That would be great. It was a really great conversation and great to get your insight. And I hope that we get the opportunity to do this more often.
Whenever you'd let me know, man, and I'll jump right on. And I'm sorry to all the listeners that my camera wasn't working. It was working earlier, but next time I promise it'll be working just fine.
Oh, that's why they're called listeners, right?
Yeah, that's
Because
right.
they
That's
can
right.
listen to you talk.
It's Russ's fault
I
anyway.
didn't mind them seeing my face for a little bit.
All right, good deal. Well, once again, we all appreciate your service. We appreciate you joining us, and looking forward to having you back on the program
Yeah,
soon.
it was awesome.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys. It was a great thing. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
thanks for sharing everything. It was awesome.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime.
For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So we've got a few minutes left. I want to sort of pass the ball around to the gang. Everybody gonna start yelling at me? You guys, you bring me on this show. I gotta sit here and listen 2 hours and 43 minutes, and then I get the last few minutes to say anything. I don't know. I was interested in the conversation myself, and the
No, it's
time
fascinating.
kind of flew by, to be
Mhm.
honest with you.
No.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, it was,
Correct me if I'm wrong. Seems like everybody in the audience was on board as well.
Mhm.
Chat was moving pretty swiftly
Mm-hmm.
to the point where there were a couple of times I was having a hard time keeping up.
yeah.
We do thank everybody who's joining us in the chat. We've got CB and Scott and Jeremy and Rita and Durso and Martin swinging by. We got DG, Randy, everybody stopped by tonight.
The whole gang tonight. Hmm.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. So what did we miss? I knew that tonight was going to be heavy on Afghanistan just because of the level of atrociousness that we're seeing over there. It's hard to not focus on that, right?
No, I was watching the news today. It's horrible. Yeah.
I know you want to talk about aliens, so
Well, have to do that, yeah. Big announcement next week.
you get an alien guest. Liberty, where are you? I was going to say where you at. I don't think that's
Where you
not
at,
very
Liberty?
characteristic of me, right?
Where you be at, Liberty?
Where you at, Liberty?
I'm over here. I've been Twitter fighting with people all week.
Oh, yeah?
She fell
I enjoyed
asleep.
the interview. I like hearing, my dad was in Vietnam, so I do like hearing about, being little and growing up. I just always wanted to know what was it like being there and just, all the details. So, of course, I wanted to ask Dom even more details about what was it like when he was sleeping there, like different, because they go on different missions and
But
things.
why
You're
didn't
not.
you're on the show? You know that, right? You're entitled to ask questions.
Mm.
There's a reason why they put a microphone in front of your face.
I wanted to let him go. I figured maybe part two.
Okay, well, part two. That's a good idea. Maybe we can have a bunch of our listeners and audience members send in questions ahead of time. And Liberty, you could have a couple of weeks to put together your questions, and we can get them to Dom in the second part. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was going off about the jumping from the planes, and so I didn't want to transition into other stuff. It was going really well. So, but yeah, I grew up thinking of that, of just what it would be like, and I just can't even imagine being there right now.
Yeah.
You put your service in, and then you're almost, almost finished, and then it goes like this. It's unbelievable. But I did want to say there was a comment from a Vietnam veteran that said, I asked how, if they had anything to say in comparison, because a lot of people were comparing what was going on in the end to Vietnam. And he was saying that in Vietnam, we tried to help them build a government like ours, here in the U.S. And in the end, the Vietnamese army dropped our weapons and fled, just like the Afghans. So, not essentially blaming the Afghans. Obviously, it's terrorists, and, we can get into the different depths of that. But, I'd like to hear more about his thoughts on it. But I think, who doesn't want freedom? That's all I really got from that, and you can only do so much. You can lead a horse to water, right? And I'm sure a lot of the people who live there do just want normal lives, but unfortunately it's been like that for so long over there. So
that's another strange dynamic that I didn't bring up, and probably should have maybe more for part 2. But I think that people on our side of the aisle are certainly at a point where we are sick of war and fighting other people's battles, and want to stop with these foreign wars. I think we're on the same page as far as that goes. So it's not that people are upset that the fact of leaving Afghanistan. It's the way it happened.
Right.
So
yeah, and he's just blaming Trump, but he's the president now, so he could have.
But that's always their playbook,
always,
isn't it? It's
always.
Any Democrat that's been think about it when Obama was in office. Any bad thing that ever happened, it was it's Bush's fault.
Right.
If it wasn't for George W. Bush, I wouldn't have this problem 7.5 years later.
Right.
And then as soon as he gets out of office, anything good Trump does is, that was mine. That was all me. That was my success.
You didn't
Thank
build
you,
that.
everybody. Trump can take zero credit whatsoever because that was all because of Barack Obama.
And if
But
that was
I
the
wanted to
case,
actually say what Biden said in his speech, actually a couple hours before the show. What Don was saying was the execution. The execution of the exit was horrifically planned and executed. But so even if, let's just say even if he wants to blame Trump for the deal or whatever they were talking about, the deal with the Taliban, still the way you executed it was horrific. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, so even if you go that route, and it's still going on now, I mean, it was a disaster. It is a disaster. So you can't blame Trump for this part of it, period.
Sure. No, it does seem by design. That's why I think people are asking questions. Is it intentional? I mean, it's horrific to think that it could be, but gosh, how could you get that so wrong? Why would you pull the military out before you have our personnel from the embassy and all the people who helped us? You could have done it over a period of time. Maybe it would have taken longer, but who's in charge? So, yeah, it's just unfortunate. And then today, it's one of the worst days in American history. You have the 13 Marines killed today. And what was it, the last 18 months of Trump being in office? We didn't lose one American soldier.
That's what I think it's more than that.
Yeah.
I think it was more than that. Jeremy posted a stat.
More than 13? Oh, maybe it's higher now. I thought I saw 13 earlier.
Since 2018.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's
I think
okay.
he said
going back
we
further.
haven't lost a single soldier. Yeah.
Okay.
Horrible.
It is. It's crazy.
Horrible.
And
people aren't
didn't
going
have
to buy it's Trump. DG says people aren't going to buy it's Trump's fault now. Well, when you see the hatred that people on the left have for Donald J. Trump,
they're still buying it.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, no.
Think about
CNN
how
is
much.
pushing that
Think
narrative.
about how much the mainstream media and the people on the left hate him. Think about everything they did to try to stop him and get in his way and tear him down from before he even got into office. Yeah. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. when you have these people who are absolutely relentless. It's a different kind of hatred. So
Right.
now maybe there are certain people who are not going to buy it any longer. They're going to start to
I think
see a
more
little bit
people
more
are
clearly.
seeing through it. More people are seeing through it now, but it's kind of late.
Yeah.
Well, watch his speech. We should watch it here.
Yeah,
It's
I think
but it's
he's.
sad though.
I think he's
It's
on
sad.
right now, actually. Yeah.
That's it. Durso just says Trump is on the phone with Hannity now discussing the situation in Afghanistan on Fox. Russ,
Right.
can we pop that in?
I don't think I have unless they're streaming it on YouTube. I don't think I have Fox.
Okay.
He put out a statement, so it's probably his.
Yeah, it's not like we're on Fox News Radio or anything.
Okay, Fox News Radio is different than Fox News Channel. I'll see what I can do.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Check that out.
Do you think it'd be on Newsmax? Because
There was
Newsmax is
Russ's
one that I
Steer 'em over
do
to the
get.
competitor. That's all.
Well, you're,
Mike's
Russ,
Newsmax.
that was your English
You've been
accent.
on Newsmax before.
Yeah, Newsmax. Hello. What do they call each other? What do they call each other?
I don't know. Newsmaxians? What are you talking about?
No, I'm saying people in England because you have that every so often you'll ask a question that sounds like you're.
You think it's on Newsmax?
Have you tried Newsmax, mate?
Yeah, I think that's Australia. I think Mate is
Sky News.
Australia.
Is good. I like Sky News. They're pretty good.
Sky News
You
Australia.
try Sky News?
I don't know if anybody's
Sure.
ever seen this because I don't think I've ever seen it. I've been on Sky News Arabia a couple
Yes.
of times.
I want to see that. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I've been on Sky News Arabia.
Is that on YouTube? Can you find it
I
out
have
there?
CBS, CNN.
I don't have it. I saw
NBC,
one of the
Sky
producers who
News.
used to be at Newsmax
Mm.
is now over at Sky News Arabia. So,
Oh, okay. Okay.
really good dude.
Nice.
So I got a call one day. Hey, you need a Second Amendment guest. Do you want to come on? I was like, okay. He said, I'm not with Newsmax anymore. I'm with Sky News Arabia. Fine, sure, whatever.
Whatever you need.
Uh,
Sure.
yeah. And I guess they do. It's probably one of those types of segments where you have the person talking and somebody translating it in the background.
okay,
So
okay.
there's they had to get some guy to say it in the native language.
Mm.
I wonder if they try to get somebody who sounds sort of like you too, right?
Probably.
They get this. We got to find a translator who is from Brooklyn and smokes too many cigars. So
Good
they
luck
could
with
sound
that,
like
yeah.
this other guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Why is President Kamala Harris trending on Twitter? That's all I want to know.
President.
You know,
Kamala Harris.
maybe it won't be long. We'll see.
Kamala. Do I say that wrong?
Kamala. Yeah, you're gonna get in
Kamala.
trouble.
Yeah, you're in trouble now.
You're
Be
not allowed
nice,
to
Liberty.
mispronounce the name.
No, I'm not. I'm a
Apparently, that makes
female.
you prejudiced.
Can I call her
Yeah.
Kamala?
Wow.
Jeez.
So what's going on?
I don't know. I don't have the channel you're looking for. I don't.
Jeremy
have
had
the
a
drones.
question for you. I don't know if you saw that, Mike, about the ATF banning the rare breed forced reset trigger and the refusal to
That's
comply
gonna
with the
take more than 7 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
unfortunately.
All
So
right.
we will get
Next
you
week,
either
next week.
either.
We got
next
more than
week.
7 minutes.
Maybe
got
we could
about
get
20
Rick
minutes.
Vasquez back on talk about that too.
I think I saw an article on that, and they set up their corporate office in their lawyer's office, which seems really smart to do. Did you see
Oh
that?
yeah. No, I didn't
Then
see
they
that.
can't look at their paperwork or something. I don't know. Next week we'll talk about it then.
I know another bit of news that came out is that Governor Murphy put out a mandate on getting vaccines for, I don't know if it's all state workers, but I know it's for
I think
teachers.
it was. I saw that.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and which includes teachers, you said.
Yeah, no,
Crazy.
it's definitely for teachers. Mm-hmm.
So they've got no choice, and that's a tough job if you're a teacher by profession. And a lot of these people have put in a lot of years, and maybe they're coming towards retirement, and they've all these benefits like a pension that they were promised going in, right? So say what you want about whether government pensions are exorbitant or whether it's a wise use of tax dollars, but these are people
It's
who got
not.
into the job, and that was part of the deal, right? I mean, they probably wouldn't have put in all of those decades into that job with that amount of pay unless they knew they had this coming to them. And if they don't want to get the vaccination, then they're in a position where they lose all of that and they don't have that opportunity to get that pension?
Doesn't sound like freedom to me.
Me neither.
You know.
Yeah, and there's all various situations that
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've been fighting with people on Twitter all week about just nobody is recognizing people who have COVID antibodies. You know, you can have proven blood work with COVID antibodies, and they're not even looking at it.
And plenty of doctors have come out saying that that's better than the vaccine, and that if you have those, you shouldn't take the vaccine.
Try searching for the articles. They're buried
right.
amongst vaccine. It's all vaccine studies. They're not
buried.
Not want
they're
to study
hidden.
And the only thing they recognize is 90 days after you've had it. Then they recommend a vaccine. Hello. If you're testing positive for COVID-19 antibodies in your blood, why do you need the vaccine?
You shouldn't. And
because they want everybody to take the vaccine.
But it doesn't seem to make sense. Yeah.
Have you guys seen the SpongeBob movie back in 2004? Do you remember that one?
I haven't seen it.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Didn't they almost die at one point or something? Didn't they almost die because
they almost died at the end, Mr. Spoiler.
Oh no!
You only had 15 years to watch it. But I think perhaps, and I have nothing to back this up. This is purely just my own speculation based on a cartoon. Okay, so you remember how Plankton came up with Plan Z and was like, "Here, with every Krabby Patty, you get a free bucket helmet," and everyone was like, "Yay, a free thing!" Like a vaccine. And then at the end, he was like, "No, everyone's actually a zombie. Those bucket heads are mind control devices." Please inject it into your skin. Be ready for the apocalypse.
Invented the vaccine.
No, he invented the bucket helmet.
And Pfizer invented the bucket helmet, and Plankton invented the vaccine.
Something like that. Those are both probably true.
Isn't David Hasselhoff in that movie?
Yeah. What are you looking it up on Google?
No, I was just thinking about it. I thought I remembered him being in that film.
Yeah.
He had a huge singing career, like over in Europe, didn't he?
What?
Did he?
Like #1 on the charts. Yeah, David Hasselhoff.
Let's see. Russ, are you looking for the Trump speech?
I did watch Knight Rider.
What? Great transition. Great transition. No, I have the
Dating
Trump
myself.
speech.
This guy Benny that I follow, Benny Johnson, he posted the Trump speech. Should I send it to you, Russ?
How long is it?
You're getting a bowl of mustard.
It's just that he just made a statement. It's like 2 minutes or something.
Oh, then
What
bring it up.
speech?
We got 2 minutes left in the
I'm gonna
program.
send it to
Yeah,
Russ
perfect,
and let
perfect.
Russ.
We'll
handle
stay
it.
a little while longer.
Mike, we got 12 minutes left in the program. What do you want?
Hey Russ, I'm sending it to you.
I forgot
via
that we started late because
text message.
Okay, Mike, just don't rub it in, would you?
our
Okay,
brilliant
Russ, that
technological.
was me, Russ. I sent it to you.
Russ, you have all the competitors, but you don't have Fox Big Bowl of Busted for you, sir.
Okay, you know what? I'm using this app called Pluto TV. They don't have Fox. I'm sorry.
Pluto.
It's free, and you don't need to
give
sign
away
up
the
for it.
secrets. Just go ahead. Don't
What?
air the dirty laundry, Russ.
Right.
Is Russ gonna play it or?
Well, for one, you sent it to
Russ
my
is
phone.
like, I don't actually know what I'm doing,
I'll
guys.
I'll put it in the dock. Okay, Russ.
And-
I'm gonna put
Oh, there's a novel idea.
Okay.
That
Okay.
sigh is very much like my own frustration.
Okay, Russ, it's in the dock. Thanks. It's a Twitter link.
Oh, great. Can't wait for it to be removed. Can you guys do some talking while I get this? I have to remote into my computer now.
Just play some mysterious music.
I don't have mysterious music. Stop trying to get me to do tech stuff.
The comment from Jeremy here is interesting. New study says people who were never infected with COVID are 6 times more likely to have severe sickness
How do they know
than
this?
unvaccinated who have had COVID.
Wait, how do they know this?
Well, it's a new study. Jeremy pointed that out, Russ.
How did they
Look at the
study
comment.
that, though?
It's a new study.
Where did they come up with
researched it.
6 times?
It's science. You believe in science, don't you, Russ?
Yeah, I'm trying to
It's
understand what
interesting
he
to
said.
see that, though. Are you saying, Jeremy, that it's
Jeremy, keep
people
it.
who were
People who were never
Like
So
vaccinated
they never
versus
had it.
unvaccinated.
So go over it again. So they never had it, and they're 6 times more likely to get it. Right? Am I misunderstanding this?
He's saying severe. The whole point is the severe sickness than the unvaccinated. Now, but there are people who are hospitalized who are vaccinated. You know?
Sure.
And
Yeah. Well,
there's a lot of different studies coming out now. And they're saying that there's a variant that might be just vaccine resistant completely.
yeah.
Oh, gee, what a shame. We're going to have to start the whole pandemic all over again. You remember that episode of South Park where they had to deal with the cable company?
Thanks.
No,
Dan.
nobody. What am I?
Say it
What
again,
am I
Max?
off my own little land here?
What's this?
The episode of South Park where they had to deal with the cable company. It was.
So I've got the doc pulled up over here.
Yeah.
It's at the top.
And what does it say? Dan Holloway from
crap.
Drinking Bros.
Uh,
Do you know who that is, Philly Chris?
Oh, that was just some notes from last time.
Yeah. So what does our audience know about Dan Holloway from Drinking Bros?
Chris was supposed to contact.
Besides,
did.
Chris
Chris
was
didn't
supposed
get
to
him on the
contact
show.
him.
Then
Well,
he's
that's
fired.
I
Philly
tried.
Chris is
All right, I'm fired. I'm
fired
sorry. Damn it! I should have erased it from the doc. That's right. I have proof that I reached out to him. He never even read my message. I sent it to him through Messenger. You know, you can see when people read it. So if you're listening, pal, reach out to me.
I
my
hate
job
that this
back.
auto plays.
Oh, Jeremy corrected it. Sorry.
went back
People
to-
never infected and vaccinated are more likely than people who were infected.
People never infected
Never infected and
are
vaccinated.
more
So
likely.
basically, the vaccine is not as affected as people who had it and
That's
recovered.
what I thought he was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Wait,
what I
wait.
thought.
Sense.
Does that mean the vaccine is making it worse?
Well, gee, you know.
Well, I
Oh,
heard it
man,
we
it's
talked
almost
about
like we
that
were
months ago, the
right.
possibility on the show, didn't we?
It's
None of
almost
this
like we
really
were
seems
right
to be
the
adding
whole
up, does it?
time.
Could be by design, maybe.
Oh,
Pandemic.
man. All right, I got
good
your
night,
video.
Durcell. Good night. We'll catch you next week. We're gonna stick around for another few minutes.
Yeah, we got 15 more minutes.
Are we allowed to say that medicine that like was used to treat us during COVID because it worked for me?
You should pull up the 9-minute video of his interview with Anthony Scaramucci. Whose interview? Oh, would have been
Trump's? Hannity's?
no, the Beer Bros guy, I think.
Oh.
I believe data from the CDC, like I believe they're aliens. Oh,
Oh,
Actually,
that
there's probably
hurts
more
Philly
evidence
Chris.
of aliens than
that's
Probably.
it's a tough one for
Yeah.
Philly Chris.
Well, craft. The UFOs are real. That's what
UFOs.
he's saying.
Okay, yeah.
Aliens,
So not necessarily
Right.
extraterrestrial man on the
That's right,
moon. Who would you
right.
ask other than someone who's I can't even remember what Biden said because it didn't make sense. Get a kid who wanted to know about ETs and the man on the moon. Who'd you
Right.
talk to?
Ghostbuster! Oh, wait, no.
Come on,
All right.
man.
Come on,
on,
man.
man.
I got this.
All
I
right,
got this
press
thing
play.
ready. Are we ready?
All right,
Yep.
let's do it.
Terrorist attack in Afghanistan. These noble American warriors laid down their lives in the line of duty. They sacrificed themselves for the country that they loved, racing against time to rescue their fellow citizens from harm's way. They died as American heroes, and our nation will honor their memory forever. I want to express my deepest condolences to the families of those we have lost. Today, all Americans grieve alongside you. Together, we also pray that God will heal the other courageous American service members who were wounded in this heinous attack. In addition, our hearts are with the families of all the innocent civilians who died and with the many men, women, and children who were terribly injured in this act of evil. This tragedy should never have taken place. It should never have happened, and it would not have happened if I were your president. Over the past few weeks, I know that many Americans have felt profound sorrow and even pain watching the events taking place in Afghanistan, and perhaps none more so than the veterans of that 20-year war. Many of them answered the call proudly and without hesitation after the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. Every American who served in Afghanistan has made tremendous sacrifices for our country. On behalf of your fellow citizens, I want you to know that those sacrifices were not made in vain. We know what you did. We know how brave you were. And we thank you, we salute you, and we honor you for all time. I hope that every American will join me in continuing to pray for the safe return of all U.S. citizens and soldiers from Afghanistan in the coming days. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
Do you think that's the message that people want to hear in the aftermath rather than what we've been getting from this administration? Do you think that there's a recognizable difference between the two?
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, they're pretty much polar opposites, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'd say Trump is more presidential.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
Let's put it this way. We literally still have Americans over there, like in harm's way. You need to have a strong message.
DG
guys
says,
watch-
now that's a leader to be proud of. Frankly, that's
Yeah.
what I think of when I see that video.
yeah, it's totally the opposite. Did you guys see Biden speak earlier? It's kind of
Yes.
scary to see him up there, and then he can't even collect his thoughts, and he just looks tired and like almost annoyed to be up there dealing with this. And and the comment he made about the reporters, he's like, "Oh, I have instructions they told me to call on these people." Like, who's telling the president what to do? And obviously, he's openly admitting that he's being instructed from behind the scenes on.
And do you think he
conduct
even
the most
realizes
basic of
that
activities.
do you think he even realizes that he's spilling the beans about something?
Nope.
I don't. It's crazy. Maybe he doesn't, and that's even more concerning, really. But he's not.
He was like
you know
reading
my
from a
thoughts.
teleprompter and like didn't even look like interested. Like it was weird.
Still owe me a beer, DG. By the way, you can't give me Kool-Aid. That's not right.
He what I know. Remember when he put his head down, Chris? Did you see that part?
Yeah, it's right. I mean, Trump would never do that, and a real leader wouldn't do that. He just, who's really running the show? And again, maybe he wasn't given all the information, or maybe he was, and the decisions that were made about this Afghanistan situation just seem ridiculous to me. I'm not in the military. I was never in the military, but if you had asked me, somebody who doesn't have any experience in the military, what to do, I certainly wouldn't have pulled the troops before getting, Americans out of there safely, and all the people who have helped us over the past couple of decades. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? So, but anyway, here we are.
Comment from Jeremy says, I know it's not in his personality, but I wish he would chill out a bit with the "if I was president, this wouldn't happen" stuff. A bit somber humility. A bit of somber humility would go a long way. It's an interesting way to look at it.
I disagree.
Who's Jeremy talking about?
It's good to hear that perspective. And he says, I'd still rather him be in office right now, just saying.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear when people get that sort of impression. I think that to a degree, I'm desensitized to a lot of the things that Trump says, because growing up in New York, a lot of what he says is subconsciously dismissed as that's just New Yorkers talking trash.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the way people are in New York. And you could tell when a guy is going over the top, or they're exaggerating, there's hyperbole involved, and it's just a normal part of the communication. Whereas other people say, oh my goodness, how could he do something like that? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's just the way he is. It's the way a lot of people are out there. But what's lost on me is the way it's perceived by a lot of other people throughout the remainder of the country, even though my kind of people are typically throughout the remainder of the country, the red states, hardworking places, things that are unlike what you'd find in places like New York.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just there's a certain attitude and personality type that if you're used to it, then those things don't jump out at you. You almost don't even notice it.
Mm.
Liberty, you grew up on the East Coast. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's very much like he's just hitting back hard, and I kind of like it because he's like a regular guy, you know. He doesn't really try to like mince words. Like I'm the type when you're sitting at a table that's everybody's like all proper. I love the person who just like breaks the ice and says something ridiculous, like, and that's what he reminds me of. He's just like he's gonna say it, and everybody's looking around the room like, was he supposed to say that? But he doesn't care, and I think
Right.
that politics needed that.
DG says, I
Absolutely.
disagree. He knows he has to give us hope again. Well,
Not only that, but I'm in the camp where I think he has the right to kind of rub it in, as far as those who did not vote for him. This is what you voted for, and if he was still
Well, we still
president,
don't even
this
know
would
what
not
happened
have
with the
happened.
election, too.
Well, yeah.
And there's a lot of things going on that
except
don't
for
make sense.
except we do know that the Republican leadership in Pennsylvania has made sure that this forensic investigation will not take place.
Yeah,
Right?
it's ridiculous, right?
That we do know.
Mhm.
He says what
Are we
we were
sure
all
it's
thinking
Republican
for years.
leadership?
She says about Trump. A lot more people like-minded than you think. We just don't have the control of the media yet.
I mean,
Yeah,
just
I
think
do
it's
find that a lot of people, whether it's the mainstream media or people who claim to be in the middle, will come out and say they don't like X, Y, and Z about Trump, which are sometimes some of his strongest assets. I do think that happens. They'll come out and say, well, he should do this or that, when really, no, that's exactly what he needs to be doing, because that's what people like about him most. And sure, maybe some people don't like it, but those are people who would never vote for him anyhow.
Right.
I just think it's interesting to hear something like that from Jeremy, who's clearly a Trump supporter, because that wouldn't even cross my mind. Being a New York guy and knowing how we
Very true.
feel New Yorkers, then you've got the other perspective that we want him to be in that position of leadership. Now, what it all comes back to is this, though. The number one question that always crosses my mind, we see him on a video like that, and like DG says, we want a leader like him. You see that, and the thing that crosses my mind is, will we see him run in 2024? What do you think, Chris?
Probably.
Will he be running in 2024?
I think he will. I think he will.
You think he will?
Yeah. Unless something, drastic happens between now and then with his
Like
health
what?
or
Like what? His health?
like health or an unexpected event or,
He's
God-
going to live to be 200. then,
Probably.
right?
Yeah,
He eats McDonald's every single day and sleeps
Right.
4 hours a night. He's going to live to be 200. He's just
Although he never did smoke or drink, so there's that. Maybe it balances
Yeah,
out.
I-
I mean, he does look pretty good, and he's got good
he
doctors.
travels.
So.
Like when I travel
Yeah.
once, like on a plane, I have jet lag for like a while. He's
Yeah.
like traveling from here to there. He's
Yeah,
like,
he's got a lot of energy. Although he does sound slightly different. He's slowing down a little bit, but who wouldn't? In
You
his
think
age,
so?
I guess. Tiny bit.
Really?
Do you guys sense a little bit of a difference in his voice inflection when he's speaking? Just a tiny bit.
not
No,
not the
I
other night
haven't.
at the rally.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. We'll see.
Not at the rally. Just saying.
But I don't know. Hopefully he's got good people around him.
He
though,
can still
because I'm
run
sure there's a
circles
lot of
around
people-
Biden, right?
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Biden can't run. He
Just
can
about-
go down the stairs.
Just about anybody could run circles around Biden. Biden would be like, I
Yeah.
love
Russ, you're a
running
little
in
loud in my
circles.
ear. Russ, for some reason, you're a little loud in my ear. Maybe you could level that off a little bit.
Turn down your
Biden's
hearing
in
aid,
serious
old man.
trouble. I think they're just leaving him in to do all the dirty work, and then they'll get him out and put Kamala in, and then they can just blame things on Biden. So he's being used, really.
Well,
You know.
that's entirely possible. Russ, do you think he'll run in 2024?
I think he will. But I also think that perhaps one of the Democrat moves that may just happen in the next couple years, perhaps this event in Afghanistan was done on purpose. Perhaps it's setting the course so that Biden can be removed on purpose and Kamala can step in. Then Kamala finishes out I think it's going to happen around the 2-year mark that Biden's at. I think it's going to happen around the 2-year mark, and then Kamala's going to swoop in, and then she can be reelected up to twice. And I think they're gonna use that, and then that gets the maximum amount of years that she can serve.
10 years of Kamala, you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a decade of Kamala.
Oh my gosh.
Kamala.
No, thank you.
Exactly. Thank you.
I kind of drifted off, and I was like, "What?"
Guys, I gotta go. I'm gonna be.
All right,
sick.
I'm leaving the country.
Yeah. Show's over.
Speaking of which, where do we? So if we do have to abandon ship, where do we go?
North Pole, maybe. We'll go to the North Pole.
No. You guys can't come here.
I'm going with the
Jeremy
aliens.
says he
Okay,
thinks Trump
DG, I'm
will
going
run.
with the
He
aliens.
thinks you should have DeSantis as VP. Set DeSantis up to run in 2028. How great would that be if he won in 2024, though? After everything that's happened, to have him come back and win and be back in office. If you thought it was sweet the
first time. Are they going to let that happen, though? Are they going to let that happen, right? They're going to control so much now, and they can manipulate things. Yeah, what if they manipulated this last election? Do we know? We don't know for sure, I suppose. I don't know for sure, but it certainly appears that way.
We don't know.
The Darfur dog.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, trying to be careful here.
We don't know if they manipulated the last election, but we do know that several states have gone through different changes to make sure that it can't happen again.
I mean, look what's going on.
Didn't Harris lose the primary within?
She got 7% of the vote, I think.
Yeah, nobody wanted her as an actual president.
She was out very quickly, so
all she's good at is cackling.
Now you got me self-conscious about my laugh. I laughed at your cackle, but I'm thinking my head off.
You laugh at the appropriate time, Mike.
Maybe I got to work on my laugh.
Right? No. You laugh when it's appropriate.
I don't
She's
like I think it's like a nervous tick.
Your cackle reminded me of Evan Baxter from Bruce Almighty.
I was observing her, and it seems like it's
Evan Almighty.
Yeah. Oh, was it Evan? Yeah. Something like.
Well, yeah, he was in both of them, wasn't he?
I didn't know there was a second one. I forgot there was a second one.
Yeah.
Please tell me it's a good movie.
Evan Almighty.
Yeah.
It was
Bruce Almighty.
It was had a Noah's Ark theme to it, where he was told to build the ark. I think Morgan Freeman was God again, but then it had this.
Well, you can't have someone else play God.
Undertime of liberal propaganda, because it was all about. I think climate change was causing the quote unquote flood or something. I forget. It's been a long time.
Well, you know what? Evan does work for the mainstream media, so. What do you expect?
I guess so, right? And it's always great to see you've got a Bible story being spread to the masses. I know that it wasn't an exact depiction of Noah or anything like that, but when they start to twist it and change it like that for a political agenda, that just really makes me that really turns me off. I can't hear that stuff.
Well, I don't think there's a person out there who hasn't heard of Noah's Ark. I think that's kind of one of the most well-known.
So DG compliment, Mike G, your laugh is great. You guys watch a lot of movies, too much time on your hands. I apologize for watching Evan Almighty in 2007 or whatever.
I don't think Mike watches as many movies now.
Right? I apologize that I had 90 minutes to go to a movie as a teenager.
Don't do that.
DG's rough, man.
DG, you don't give any of us a break.
Not tonight.
I did hear a counter argument to something DG said in the chat a couple of weeks ago. She was getting on Liberty for saying something. I don't think Liberty even said she bought from Amazon. I think she said something like she thought her credit card was hacked because she got some kind of a notification from purchase from Amazon and didn't do it, so was looking into it.
Right.
But somebody, I think it was this lady who's a pastor or something like that, was saying that what people are failing to realize about Amazon is that if you boycott them completely, you do also hurt small businesses who are selling online, because they're the vendors. Amazon might be the platform, but ultimately,
although they're choosing to do business with them, I suppose. So
what's that?
Well, they're choosing to do business through Amazon, I suppose. So there's that.
Well, if that's their best way to make money for their
Put food
family,
on the table.
and can you blame them?
If they're using Amazon, yeah.
You can blame them if they are using.
Well, I don't really like Walmart, for example, so I avoid going there. I think you say vote with your dollars, right?
Right.
So if you're going to do business and you don't like the way they're running things or the way they're treating their employees, but you're still using them as an avenue because they're still getting a cut of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got rid of my Amazon account a couple of years ago because I was like, I'm just not doing this anymore. I'd rather spend a little more money at a local place.
Yeah, I mean, but some things you just
If
can't
you're
find
actually
what you're
gonna do
looking
that.
for.
If you're actually going to do that, then that's great. But
Right.
there
The
are
online
many
sector.
good, hardworking people and small business owners
Yeah,
who
no,
have their
I
products
see
on
both
Amazon.
sides of it. It's a tough one because
online
but that's the problem. So many people allowed that to happen that now it's like you can't even, go somewhere local because those places are gone or closed or, there's a premium to shop there, I suppose. But I've seen you do it, Mike. I've seen you
I go
spend
local
more money.
and I go online. You can do both.
Like the flags you bought that day, you could have got those online at Amazon probably
For
a
a
couple of days
quarter of the
later. Yeah, for a
price.
quarter of the price.
Paid way too much for those flags.
But I respect that. You did that. I respect that.
I wanted to support those people.
Yeah. But unfortunately, not enough people are doing that to make a difference, I guess.
Well, I think there's also the view of not only can you save money, but for someone like me, I don't like to wait for things to be delivered unless I have to. So if I can find, if I'm looking for a Blu-ray or a DVD at Walmart and they don't have it, well, I'm gonna check probably another store, and if I just can't find what I'm looking for, then I'll go to eBay.
But where would you even go to buy a DVD from? A small business, a family-owned business. Is there a DVD store somewhere?
Not Blockbuster.
I've
anymore.
seen some locally, but there's not many
You've seen
left.
you've seen a local DVD store.
I don't know if they'd be local.
There's one in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely a storefront. There's some kind of.
They still rent. You can rent DVDs there. You can buy them. They have
Then
regular
you're
Blu-ray. It's a
nuts.
big store. No, it's in Ardmore. You
So-
can look it up right now.
So, Mike,
It's like the only one I know
What?
of, though, in the whole country. But
You're being serious. There's
I'm
a
serious.
DVD rental store in Ardmore, Pennsylvania.
I'm serious. Yeah, it's right on the main drag there by the train station. Yeah.
Mike,
Get out of here.
No, I'm serious. I was just in there a few weeks ago.
for what?
Well, because I still prefer, I didn't rent anything, but I was just looking, but a regular DVD or Blu-ray is still higher quality than what you can stream through, the boxes generally.
Well,
So,
and that's my point, because
it might be less convenient. But.
there are still places in the United States where the internet just isn't good enough, where it'll either be constantly buffering or you have to watch it at a lower quality.
Yeah,
and
sure.
it just makes more sense because Blu-rays can hold like 50 gigabytes.
Guys,
What's
Gigi
funny? What's
Gigi
funny?
doesn't give any of us a break because even Philly Chris is agreeing with her, and now she's going after Philly Chris.
I wasn't buying it. I was just looking. So,
sorry, that's
DG's
funny.
right. I wasn't buying anything. I'm trying to find the name
He
of
was
it.
renting the DVD, not buying.
Here
the
it is.
DVD.
It's
Well,
called
that-
Viva Video.
Well,
He
Redbox
was,
is
he
still
was
Viva
renting a
Video.
Nintendo game and a tape.
Here's a shout out to Viva Video. Viva Video is a DVD, Blu-ray, and they also have VHS rentals, believe it or not.
No.
Wow.
They have a lot of rare titles. Some of the stuff isn't available, so that's another reason. There's like some rare title stuff going on there.
Stuff that's only available
But
on
you can
VHS.
actually go over there right now in Ardmore, Pennsylvania on Lancaster Avenue and join them. It's like a Blockbuster style store. It's big too. They have a lot of stuff in there. But it's a niche market for sure. And who knows how long they'll survive, but they're doing okay, I guess. Yeah, I was talking to the guy in there. I was curious.
I had a couple of VHSs converted to DVD
Yeah.
recently.
There you go. There you go.
Well, I'm gonna have all my DVDs converted to VHS. I'm gonna go backwards.
You can do that fairly easily, by the way.
I'm gonna
Well,
take
Blu-ray's a
my
great
iPod
format.
to the Ardmore store and say,
There
hey,
you go.
put all these songs on 8-track for me, all right?
That'd be great.
Turn all these into records, will you?
Can you burn some albums for me? You got any reel-to-reels in here?
Put some records for me.
Oh, by the way, I had to go visit the North Pole and go visit Russ recently.
Yeah.
And
It's
Right.
hot up here.
Up there
All
now
the
with all
glaciers
Came
are
out-
gone.
Russ came out in his jammies and barefoot, like, and I told him he was gonna burn his feet, but I was like, "Where's your slippers?" But it was funny to see him in his environment.
Yeah, she says, "Where's your slippers?" And it's like 102 outside.
So is the producer in his natural habitat.
That's right.
He was upset about something with the car situation, but
Yeah.
that's Russ.
Oh, are we talking about video stores again? Oh, about where to get these things in person if you want to patronize a small business.
Well, is Redbox local? Is that like a franchise?
You know what
like
we should do?
Ignore me.
Let's do this. Everybody who's listening, I know a lot of people have popped off because we got late, but let's make it a point to maybe put this out there on social media and do this in the future. Maybe we could even start talking about it in next week's episode. Let's make a list of places in Pennsylvania that you can patronize if you want to support a small business and give them and vote with your dollars. What do you think?
Sounds good. I like
Then
it.
we could have this list that we've got and we could share it with all of our audience members.
Yeah.
And we're going to need your help in the audience because
Yes.
you know, we're not all going to know
And
where to
wait,
buy certain things.
I got a better idea. We can charge these businesses to be mentioned on the program,
Well, there we go. Yeah.
and we'll call it advertising.
Who's gonna vet them? Who's gonna vet them? Because some of them are so out there, like lefty. I know a couple of them I actually stopped going to. Okay, so there's like categories, like you have small business, and under that small business category, you have like ones that are really out there, like, you know, causing problems. Just want to say.
So we gotta ask around, right?
Yeah.
We need some Patriot ones.
Hopefully everybody will be able to contribute.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a hardware store in northern Chester County. DG says, Liberty, I will get you away from Amazon.
There we go. Do it, DG.
Yeah, the thing is, where do you even go if not to Amazon or even eBay is owned by PayPal?
Listen,
Well,
like
it's
you
tough.
don't
It's
don't
tough.
have much
As a
choice.
It's a commitment.
as a shopper, no, they're, and also, you know, you are giving small businesses a platform. So I am not going to shame, you know, hey man, you know, the person I heard say this argument was saying that she wishes she thought of it. You know, she wishes she thought of what Jeff Bezos did, but you know, it's putting food on the table for some small business owners. But I know a lot of small businesses just saying, like I was saying, that are total leftists and we're really discriminatory towards Trump voters and things like that. And you know, there's
true though.
downfalls
You're really shrinking your as a business owner, and
Yeah.
I'm not in the business of selling products. But as a business owner, you're really shrinking your clientele if you're saying that you can't get things through Amazon, right? If you're not offering it through Amazon, you're saying, imagine if you just said,
Like a monopoly.
I
really.
can't imagine having a talk with that video store owner though. Like somebody meets him out on the street, like, oh man.
Well, that's why I was curious. I like talking to
I
people.
really wish that I could find, you know, I don't know, name a movie. I can't name any movie that DG be like, you saw that one too? All you do is sit in front of that television set, Michael.
Well, how about like Night of the Comet? You ever see that movie? It was in
How
the
about
80s.
Space
That's probably
Jam?
before your time.
I don't know. I'd have to go toe to toe with DG on this because I just think if you get into the nitty gritty of it, and I mean, literally, if you're going to go
let me finish out my hypothetical. So I'm out somewhere and I say, you know what? I really wish I could. I want to get that Fight Club DVD, right? I want to get the Fight Club DVD. And so a guy who's online at the grocery store hears me say this. He's like, oh, as a matter of fact, I own a store. I'm a small business and we support local people. And so you can buy your Fight Club DVD from my store if you'd like to patronize me and support a patriot.
I'll be right
and
back.
I say, that would be great. I would love to do that. And then I say, where can I buy it? And he says, well, you've got to come out to this store in Ardmore and see me and pick it out and pay it over there. That's a lot more difficult. A lot of people are going to say, well, I don't have time to do that. I'd rather just do something online. I'm not saying that's my personal preference. I'm saying the fact of the matter is there are a lot of people where they're going to choose to go a different route if the business is not offering that online option or that Amazon option, right?
Mhm.
I got nobody else on the show anymore.
Well, Chris walked away, and Liberty and I are both just disembodied
I am telling a
voices.
story. Chris walks away. DG's over here making fun of me.
DG reminds you of Donald Trump.
Ask yourself, do I really need it? Well, that's a very Fight Club type message out of all this. I think that's the conclusion here.
Okay.
A world of consumers, right?
How about this, Mike? So you want this Fight Club DVD? Okay, this fight. Let's make it a Blu-ray. We'll give you an upgrade. All right. You want this Fight Club Blu-ray, and it's for so many dollars at this guy's store. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You go online, and it's a tenth of the price.
What?
Okay, so you. Well, I think we get that too. That's probably another part of it. But when we go to patronize these businesses, we know that we're going to be spending more. We can't possibly get it less expensive because these people got to make a living, and they're not doing the volume that Amazon's doing. Let's say, right?
Right.
Or Walmart's doing, or any of these bigger corporations. So we know that that's part of the deal. I'm going to spend a few extra bucks so that Joe down the street or the hardware store down the street can make some money. But DG says, and that's why the left took over lazy on the right's part. Oh, sure.
I don't know. I mean, I make a choice based on a lot of different things. But honestly, if I was going to get into that nitty gritty of it, I would go to every store that's surrounding me and like ask every single person, ask the owners, what do you believe in? What's this? What's that? I mean, that's kind of what the left does, like with Chick-fil-A.
I guess it's also easy for us to be considered, or people on the right to be considered the lazy ones, when it's these leftist companies who came up with these convenient sort of ideas, right? Maybe people on the right need to make some ideas that make things more convenient. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Rumble's
pretty
do you guys remember when Chick-fil-A was blasted and everybody didn't go there, and because they found out who they were donating to, the CEO or something? I mean, if you're going to go to every single store like Acme per se, I'm going to go there and find out what their core beliefs are, I'm just going by products. I will say one thing about Amazon is that some of their products are just really covered up, and they're not really that great quality. So you really have to look into the company and stuff like that. So I'm very picky. I'm very picky.
Isn't that also a benefit to being able to see something in person too?
Yeah.
There's that.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's not Amazon in particular. That's just in person versus online. With some things, you'd rather hold it in your hand.
Well, that's beneficial. That's only beneficial in some situations. Like Chris said, it's beneficial with shoes, but for something like I don't know, a screwdriver. Okay, it's very inconsequential when you go to hold it. They're all basically the same.
You're gonna have a screwdriver aficionado pop into the comments.
I have a snap-on screwdriver.
Would it be appropriate to say screw
no idea
them?
what you're talking about, Russ. All screwdrivers are not created equal.
They're not. I'll tell you that.
Well, if you put in screwdriver in Amazon, I'm telling you, you will get all these weird brands, probably made in China, things like that, and then you have to really, really weed through to find
To me, the only screwdriver worth getting is a Craftsman screwdriver.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something I would go to a hardware store because I want to see it.
Harbor Freight.
Yeah.
Some of their stuff's good, but you got to be careful.
Amazon, I go for I don't know. I guess I'll give an example, which DG's probably be like, "Well, how do you do that?" But Dawn liquid detergent, I'll get it on there.
Why? Does that have any cost benefit? Because those are already really low in price.
So I bought dish soap at the dollar store one time, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was like water. It was like colored water. I'm like,
was it tasty?
Certain brand names.
It was just so thin, it didn't do anything. It was a dollar store.
Was it water? Hey,
where else
what,
you
Chris,
buy,
you get
though?
what you
Where
pay
else
for.
would you buy Dawn dish detergent though?
Acme.
How about Dollar General?
What Patriot store is selling the Dawn liquid detergent? In order to get that, I kind of picture in my head from the movie No Country for Old Men, where you got that town store, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Where you go in and there's that bell on the top.
Where you flip the quarter.
Right?
Flip the quarter. He's like, pick a side.
Yeah. Just call it. Just call
The
it.
guy's like, what for? He's like, well, for everything. Something like that.
Sorry, Mike, you use Palmolive, or Curly Chris used Palmolive.
Yeah.
And you gotta go into like one of those stores to get your dish detergent. Where
I
else
just
you
happened
get
to
it?
be
Where's
there
the
and I saw it.
Patriot
I was like,
store?
how bad? I didn't even think. I was like, how bad could it be, really? But it
Wait,
was bad.
But Liberty,
bad.
you're saying Acme. Do we know anything about the values of the corporation that owns Acme? Because I'm pretty sure they got them over in New
for
Jersey.
DG. I'm not going to walk into Acme and like
It's like the
research
Roadrunner,
them.
doesn't
I don't
the-
know at this point.
Bugs Bunny or the
If it
Roadrunner
gets
own
to
that?
that
So
point,
what store is it? What grocery
one that sells
store is the good
dynamite.
grocery store?
Reese's in Oklahoma, or
Reese's in Oklahoma. No, Reese's. So Reese's in Oklahoma. I think I told you about.
Cash goes there.
Well, here's what you got to know about Reese's in Oklahoma. I recall when open carry became legal in Oklahoma in 2012. Ultimately, the law was that if you had a concealed handgun license in Oklahoma, you would then be allowed to also open carry. Open carry was illegal until I think November 2012 in Oklahoma. And when this new law was passed and it was going to be coming out, what they said at Reese's was they issued this press release saying, we respect the Second Amendment, but we don't want you open carrying in our Reese's stores. Well, there's Walmart across the street from the Reese's store, and they basically put out a press release saying, you want to open carry? Come on over to Walmart.
Smart.
And
I remember you
Reese's
telling
the
that
next
story.
day issued like a new press release saying something like, "Oh no, we were just kidding. I don't know what got into us. Did we say you couldn't open carry? We meant you could. I'm sorry."
Okay, hold on. We have David Cressman saying Amazon won't support kids, sports, or local events. How do I know the CEO of Acme does? Can somebody tell me that, please? Thank you.
All you got to go to is Little League and see who is supporting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
DG
gonna be
has
rough.
cows?
We got to go to a
Cows?
Little League game. Maybe we should do that. The gang goes to a Little League game.
No, dude, that's weird.
Why?
Strangers showing up to a little league game? None of us have any kids.
Mike was almost a professional baseball player, so.
What about? I mean, people enjoy the Little League World Series, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
I don't watch baseball. It's
It's a
boring.
Pennsylvania thing. Williamsport.
That was the quickest no I've ever heard from Ross.
What are you, nuts?
We just gotta take Russ everywhere he doesn't want to go.
Let's go milk cows at DG's. Apparently.
Yeah, DG says
Yeah.
on the
Who
couch.
here's milked a cow before?
Milking cows.
Oh, I've always wanted to
milked
churn
cows
some
in New
butter.
Hampshire.
DG says I let the cows lick the dishes clean.
That sounds
Hey,
sanitary.
DG, when I come over to your place for that dinner party, I'm bringing paper plates with me. Okay? don't worry about it. I'll save you the hassle. I'll bring the
That's
paper
great.
plates.
Oh, okay.
It's
What are
better
we
than the
having,
dollar
ground
store
beef?
Dawn. The fake Dawn at
Dollar
the dollar
store
store.
And DG got me on that bar soap, by the way. And remember that comment DG made a couple
Which
of weeks
one?
ago? Was saying
Which
stop
one was it?
using liquid soap.
Oh yeah, I use bar soap.
Yeah, what are you using? What are you doing using Dawn? Huh?
Is it- I was over at Longwood Gardens, over in Kennett Square.
That's a beautiful place. Yeah.
And in the gift shop, they had this bar of soap, and I'm like, I'm gonna try this out. I'm like
Soap.
some bar soap aficionado.
What are you, some kind of bar soap
All
snob?
right, we'll stay at the bed and
I'm
breakfast.
a bar
and
soap,
then we'll milk cow.
become a bar soap snob. I see what you did, DG. It ain't
just
cheap.
like,
Bar soap. I don't think it's inexpensive either, right? At least good quality bar soap.
Yeah, depends on what you got.
How do you know if it's good quality till you open it?
I just like ivory, the ivory stuff.
You just give it the Biden test. You go, right?
End up with all that hairspray.
Why not just skip a step and snort hairspray?
You know.
That was pretty good. I like that one. It was good having him on as guest. We got to have him back because 3 hours frankly wasn't
Yeah,
enough.
that was awesome. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we are well over time now.
Yep.
We're gonna
That's
let
okay.
everybody-
Let's take it to 4 hours.
No.
Jeremy says, since I've been coaching my son's team for the last 4 years, parents don't support their kids' teams enough. They expect to pay the fees and drop their kids off like daycare and have no involvement. Yeah, it's always good to have parents involved in youth sports. Even, sometimes you'll have someone who coached young teens and young ball players for, I don't want to say for a living, but that's how I earned my money throughout law school. I can say there are certain parents who were too involved.
Helicopter.
All right, back up, pal. Kid tell me how to coach the team. It's like, all right,
who's the coach here?
What do you do for a living? I'm an engineer. It's like, am I going to go to your job and like pick your work apart? I know nothing about your job. I'm not going to tell you how to do it.
Don't build that bridge that way.
Jerry says, awesome show.
It was a good show.
All right, good deal. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate it. We've got a heck of a show in store for you next week. Don't forget to tell your friends about tonight's episode so they could check it out, have them like the video, and subscribe. The more, the merrier on this program. That's it. I'll play us out.
All right.
What does that mean?
100% proof of aliens next week for DG, too. Just kidding, of course, but big announcement, yeah.
What does that mean to play us out?
Do it live.
All right, and we'll do it live. New track from Sting. Take it away.
Take it away. Good stuff. All right. Good night, everybody. Peace and love.
Thanks for tuning in. That's all the time we've got for today. Stick around for We the People, The Constitution Matters. Pastor David Whitney, Professor Phil Duffy. I'll be joining as your legal analyst. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.